Hey guys, tonight we're going into the ancient system that taught slaves how to be free and emperors how to stay sane. 55 Stoic principles that dissect exactly how your mind creates suffering and how to stop it. This isn't philosophy for academics. This is the operating manual for your consciousness. Before we begin, if this kind of deep, reflective content is your thing, take a second to like the video and subscribe. It helps more people find this valuable content. Also drop a comment letting me know where you're listening from and what time it is. I'm always curious who's out there, trying to fall asleep or lying awake trying to quiet your mind. Now get comfortable. Adjust your position, dim the lights, let everything fade. We're about to explore the discipline that turned a crippled slave named Epictetus into one of history's greatest teachers, that kept Admiral Stockdale alive through 7 years of torture, that allowed Marcus Aurelius to rule an empire without losing his soul. From the mechanics of how impressions hijack your peace, to why you suffer over things that haven't happened, to the exact moment where you can interrupt every destructive emotion before it takes control. Some of this will feel like relief, like someone finally explaining why your mind torments you. Some will be uncomfortable, forcing you to see how much energy you waste fighting reality. This isn't about positive thinking or pretending pain doesn't exist. It's about surgical precision, separating the event from your judgment, the sensation from the suffering, the external chaos from your internal command center. Because the Stoics discovered what neuroscience now proves. Between stimulus and response, there's a gap. And in that gap lives your entire freedom. So let's begin. Principle 1. The discipline of assent. Every day, thousands of impressions strike your mind like arrows in a storm. Words, glances, notifications, memories. Each one carries a subtle whisper. Believe me, and most people do. They accept every thought, every feeling, every mental image as truth. But Stoicism begins with a ruthless rejection of that passivity. Before it teaches you what to do, it teaches you how to think. The first principle, the discipline of assent, is your mind's gatekeeper, the wall that separates chaos from sovereignty. Epictetus called every impression that enters your mind a fantasia, a raw appearance, not yet reality. It's like seeing lightning far away. The flash itself is just an event, but the story you attach to it, I'm in danger, the gods are angry, tonight's ruined, is the judgment that turns appearance into suffering. Between that instant and your reaction lies a space. The Stoics called that space the hegemonikon, the ruling faculty, the seat of reason, the command center of your inner world. In that split-second gap between stimulus and response, you either hand over your freedom or reclaim it. Every impression that enters your mind demands one of three verdicts: accept, reject, or suspend. The untrained mind rushes to accept everything. The insult means disrespect. The delay means rejection. The silence means disapproval. The disciplined mind pauses. It examines the evidence, strips away assumptions, and asks, do I know this is true? If not, assent is withheld. That pause is the seed of mastery. Marcus Aurelius practiced this relentlessly. In the freezing military camps along the Danube, when sleep wouldn't come and the weight of the empire pressed on his chest, he'd whisper to himself, this is merely my judgment about the thing, not the thing itself. He separated the fact from the fiction. A sleepless night? Just that, nothing more. His body's fatigue didn't mean failure. His thoughts of doom weren't prophecies. By dissecting his perceptions, Marcus maintained command of the only empire that truly mattered, his mind. Every modern mind faces the same battle, just on a different battlefield. Someone cuts you off in traffic. The event itself is value neutral. A car changed lanes. But your mind doesn't stop there. It adds commentary. Disrespectful. Idiot. How dare they? Within seconds, your heart rate spikes, your jaw tightens, and you've lost peace over a stranger's split-second decision. The Stoic sees this as delusion in motion. You've handed control of your emotions to an external event you couldn't prevent. But once you recognize the mechanics, the illusion collapses. The gap between the event and your judgment becomes visible. That space is where your freedom lives, not in controlling traffic, weather, or people, but in controlling interpretation. And that's the essence of the discipline of Assent. You stop being a puppet jerked by every impression and become the gatekeeper of your own mind. Before Stoicism teaches you to govern the world, it demands that you govern the fortress inside your skull, your inner citadel. Because the moment you can govern Assent, you become untouchable. But to truly guard that fortress, you must first understand which battles are even yours to fight. Principle 2. The dichotomy of control. Some things are up to us, and some things are not. Epictetus begins his Enchiridion with that sentence, and it detonates like a bomb. The simplicity hides its brutality. It's a surgical distinction that severs you from most of what you cling to. Your opinions, desires, and aversions, these are up to you. Your health, wealth, reputation, and even your body, they are not. The world calls this pessimism. The Stoic calls it freedom. Think about it. You can train for health, but you can't command your cells not to mutate. You can act with integrity, but you can't control whether people respect you. You can love with everything you have, but you can't force someone to stay. Every ounce of energy spent resisting this truth fuels anxiety, resentment, and despair. The Stoic sees this as wasted motion, like punching waves. The only inviolable territory is your prohairesis, your moral character, your capacity for reasoned choice. Everything else is on loan from the universe, to be used wisely but surrendered calmly when taken. Viktor Frankl, centuries later, rediscovered this in the hell of a concentration camp. Stripped of freedom, family, and dignity, he realized the last human freedom remained, to choose one's attitude in any circumstance. That realization didn't just keep him alive. It made him free in the one realm his captors could never invade. The same insight saved Admiral James Stockdale's mind in Vietnam. When his jet was shot down, and he spent 7 years being tortured in the Hanoi Hilton, he relied entirely on Epictetus. Stockdale understood the dichotomy of control wasn't a comforting theory, it was a survival weapon. He couldn't control the pain, the isolation, or his captor's cruelty, but he could control whether he betrayed his comrades. That single distinction drew the line between despair and dignity. Modern anxiety is the exact opposite of Stoic clarity. People obsess over outcomes they can't command: politics, algorithms, likes, gossip, the economy, their partner's moods. The world becomes one massive sphere of not up to you, while their attention is entirely invested in it. The result? Helplessness disguised as concern. The Stoic redirects all that energy to where it actually counts: your choices, your responses, your conduct. When something happens, the first Stoic question is never why me, but is this up to me? If yes, act with excellence. If no, accept it with grace. That's the discipline that amputates suffering at its root. You can't control your reputation, but you can control your integrity. You can't control the market, but you can control your effort. You can't control death, but you can control how you live until it arrives. Freedom isn't about changing the external world. It's about ceasing to be enslaved by it. And once you've drawn that line between what's yours and what's not, a deeper truth emerges. Even your desires themselves might need realignment. Because most suffering doesn't come from events, it comes from wanting the wrong things. Principle 3. The redirection of desire. Epictetus taught that ordinary people spend their lives chasing phantoms: health, wealth, reputation, all things outside their control. They structure their happiness around dice they can't throw. Then they're shocked when life doesn't obey. The Stoic solves this not by giving up desire, but by redirecting it entirely. Desire only to use each moment virtuously. It sounds radical until you see the math. If you only desire what's up to you, your actions, your reason, your choices, you achieve a 100% success rate. No disappointment, no fear of loss, no dependence on outcomes. Desire your reputation, and you've enslaved your peace to strangers. Desire only to act well, and nothing can ever be taken from you. That isn't resignation, it's strategic realism. Seneca understood this better than anyone. He was one of the wealthiest men in Rome, But he spent weeks each year sleeping on the floor and eating coarse bread. Not because he needed to suffer, but because he wanted proof that he didn't need comfort. Poverty isn't having too little, he wrote. It's desiring more than you have. He tested himself constantly to ensure he owned his wealth, not the other way around. Epictetus illustrated the same truth with an archer's metaphor. The archer controls his stance, his aim, his release, but not where the wind takes the arrow. His duty is to shoot excellently, not to hit the target. Desire to shoot well, not to hit. At first it sounds absurd. Why aim if not to hit? But the Stoic archer is free of performance anxiety. His satisfaction comes from execution, not outcome. If the arrow lands true, good. If it misses, he still acted perfectly within his control. The same logic applies everywhere. Desire to be a loving parent, not to have obedient children. Desire to work excellently, not to receive promotion. Desire to speak truthfully, not to be believed. When your desire is tied to virtue, no external failure can injure you. Rejection, loss, insult, they all become irrelevant background noise. This redirection of desire transforms daily life into an unbreakable calm. You're no longer bargaining with the universe. Give me this result, then I'll be happy. You've cut the leash entirely. Every situation becomes an opportunity to practice virtue, courage in difficulty, patience in delay, humility in success. You stop chasing outcomes and start mastering conduct. Seneca once wrote, "He who is contented with his lot is rich." The Stoic doesn't mean passive acceptance of mediocrity. He means independence from outcome. To desire only excellence of soul is to carry fulfillment into every circumstance. And that's where this first triad of principles, assent, control, desire, converges. You filter impressions carefully, focus only on what's yours to command, and aim your desire toward internal virtue instead of external result. That's the tripod on which the entire Stoic mind stands. Because the moment your assent becomes deliberate, your control becomes focused, and your desires become pure, nothing the world does can touch you. You've built the foundation of the citadel Marcus Aurelius spoke of, a mind that cannot be invaded, because it no longer fights unnecessary wars. Principle 4. The unity of virtue. In a world obsessed with results, the Stoics made a claim that cut against every human instinct. Only virtue is good, and only vice is evil. Everything else, wealth, health, pleasure, success, fame, even life itself, is indifferent. That statement was so radical it scandalized ancient Athens, because it dismantled everything people thought they knew about value. To the Stoic, your worth isn't measured by what happens to you, but by how you respond, by the quality of your character, not the condition of your circumstances. Zeno, the founder of Stoicism, discovered this truth through disaster. According to legend, he was once a wealthy merchant sailing from Cyprus when his ship wrecked near Athens, taking all his possessions with it. Standing on foreign shores with nothing but the clothes on his back, he wandered into a bookstore and picked up Xenophon's Memorabilia of Socrates. There he read of a man who owned nothing but his mind, and yet was the richest of all men. Zeno realized that the shipwreck hadn't ruined him, it had freed him. If a man can lose everything and still remain composed, dignified, and rational, then goodness cannot depend on fortune. It must be something internal, unbreakable, self-sufficient, and entirely one's own. From that insight came the Stoic definition of virtue, or arete, the state of moral excellence that aligns human reason with nature. But the Stoics didn't divide virtue into fragments the way later moralists would. They saw 4 pillars: wisdom, Sophia, courage, Andreia, justice, Dichotomy, and temperance, Sophroson, as facets of one unbreakable crystal. Each reflects the others, and to lack one is to weaken all. Wisdom without courage is cowardice disguised as intellect. Courage without justice becomes brutality. Justice without temperance turns into self-righteous tyranny. Temperance without wisdom becomes timid restraint. The Stoic ideal is unity, one coherent soul guided by reason, immune to contradiction. To understand how serious this unity was, look at Cato the Younger. When Julius Caesar destroyed the Roman Republic, most senators compromised, bowed, or fled. Cato refused. He fought until the last defense fell, and when capture was inevitable, he chose death over submission. Caesar called it defeat. The Stoics called it victory. Cato lost his life but preserved his integrity, his only true possession. In that moment, virtue proved itself untouchable. You can chain the body, silence the tongue, extinguish the breath, but you cannot take from a man the moral will that chooses rightly. That's what the Stoics meant by calling virtue the sole good. The modern mind rebels against this. We're taught that happiness depends on favorable conditions, comfort, health, money, love, recognition. But these are all externals, vulnerable to fortune's whims. A virus can end your health. A market crash can erase your wealth. A betrayal can shatter your reputation. If your peace depends on what can be taken, you've built your happiness on sand. The Stoic builds on stone. He knows that fulfillment doesn't come from circumstance. It comes from excellence of soul. There are people who prove this daily. The paralyzed man who radiates calm wisdom. The single mother who endures hardship with dignity. The prisoner who refuses to surrender his integrity. The Stoic looks at them and sees the truth. Virtue alone is sufficient for happiness, because virtue alone is under your control. Everything else is just noise around the signal of character. But virtue isn't passive. It's not about smiling through pain or pretending suffering doesn't exist. It's about acting rightly, thinking clearly, and choosing nobly in every circumstance. To live virtuously is to align your reason with nature's order, to accept fate without resentment, and to treat others with justice and compassion, because, as the next principle teaches. Principle 5, Oikeiosis, the circles of concern and natural affection. The Stoics saw human connection not as an ethical duty, but as a natural extension of reason itself. They called it oikeiosis, a word that means familiarization or becoming at home with the world. Every human, they believed, begins life with a circle of concern around the self, the instinct for self-preservation, the basic drive to survive and avoid harm. As we mature, that circle naturally expands to family, community, city, and ultimately, all of humanity. The Stoic task is to consciously draw those outer circles inward until we treat strangers with the same regard we reserve for those closest to us. Even in infancy, Stoics observed, this process begins. A child doesn't learn to care for its parents through philosophy, it's built in. The baby clings to the caregiver because affection and connection are biological before they are moral. That's nature's blueprint for social life. Care radiating outward. Philosophy simply continues the process that nature began. The Stoic hierarchals visualized this expansion through concentric circles. At the center is yourself. Next, immediate family. Then extended family, community, fellow citizens, and finally, all rational beings. The practice is to mentally pull those circles inward, treating your neighbor as you would a cousin, a stranger as you would a friend, and ultimately, every human as kin. It's not sentimental altruism. It's rational recognition of what you already are, a fragment of the same divine logos that animates everyone else. Marcus Aurelius lived this philosophy each morning. When you wake, he wrote, tell yourself, today I shall meet people who are meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, deceitful, jealous, and surly. But I have seen the beauty of good and the ugliness of evil, and I know that the wrongdoer has a nature related to mine, not of the same blood, but of the same intelligence and divinity. He didn't see tolerance as virtue, he saw it as realism. To be angry at the foolish or cruel was as irrational as being angry at a storm. They act according to their understanding, limited, flawed, but natural. The wise response isn't contempt, it's clarity. This worldview made Stoicism revolutionary. In an age of tribes, slaves, and rigid hierarchies, Stoics like Epictetus, a man born into slavery, taught that all humans share divine reason. I am a citizen of the cosmos, he said, not merely of Rome. That phrase, 2,000 years before the word cosmopolitan existed, collapsed every artificial boundary. Nation, race, class, gender, and status became irrelevant next to the shared spark of reason. This wasn't theoretical. It demanded action. To a Stoic, justice isn't fairness in law. It's affection extended through understanding. You treat others well not to appear virtuous, but because harming them is harming yourself. The hive and the bee rise and fall together. The soldier who protects his comrades, the ruler who governs with fairness, the worker who acts with integrity, they all live kataleptic, according to nature. The modern world, obsessed with individualism, misses this entirely. We glorify independence while decaying in loneliness. The Stoic reminds us, you're not an isolated self. You're an organ in a larger organism. To act against others is to mutilate the body you belong to. To live for the whole is to live sanely. And yet this expansion of concern isn't blind compassion. It requires discernment, an understanding of what's real and what's imagined, what's fact and what's interpretation. Because before you can care rightly for others, you must see them, and reality itself, clearly. That's the work of the next discipline. Principle 6. Kataleptic Impressions, the Stoic theory of knowledge. The Stoics believe that most people don't see the world. They see their opinions about it. Their minds are fogged by assumptions, desires, and fears, confusing appearance with truth. To live wisely, you must learn to tell the difference between what merely seems and what is. This is where Stoic epistemology enters, the theory of kataleptic impressions. Chrysippus, one of the great Stoic thinkers, defined a kataleptic fantasia as an impression that 1. Comes from what is real, 2. Accurately represents it, and 3. Couldn't have come from something unreal. That's a high bar. Most of your daily impressions fail it. When someone looks away mid-conversation and your mind whispers they're bored or they dislike me, that's not knowledge, it's fiction. A true impression would stop at, they looked away. Everything else is an addition you made. Zeno used his hand to demonstrate this hierarchy of understanding. An open palm represents a mere impression, raw data. Fingers closing represent assent, your acceptance that it's true. A closed fist represents knowledge. And one hand clasping the other symbolizes complete understanding, a coherent worldview. Most people, Zeno warned, close their fist too early. They mistake impressions for truth, collapsing imagination into reality. The result? A life governed by illusion. Marcus Aurelius turned this into a daily exercise. He stripped away the mental projections we layer over objects. Wine became fermented grape juice. Royal robes became sheeps will dyed with shellfish blood. Sex became friction and a spasm. His goal wasn't cynicism, it was clarity. When you see things as they truly are, free from glamour or aversion, they lose their power to disturb you. Prestige dissolves. Fear shrinks. Desire purifies. Modern psychology finally caught up. Cognitive behavioral therapy, the most empirically validated form of modern psychotherapy, rests on the same insight. The Stoics were the first cognitive therapists. My boss hates me is a judgment. My boss frowned during my presentation is an observation. Change your interpretation, and you change your emotion. 2,000 years later, CBT rediscovered what Epictetus taught. It's not events that disturb us, but the opinions we hold about them. To live with kataleptic clarity is to see without distortion. The world ceases to be your enemy because it no longer surprises you. You stop reacting to shadows and start responding to facts. You strip away fantasy until only reality remains, and reality, seen clearly, is bearable. The Stoics didn't practice this for intellectual vanity. They practiced it for freedom. When your perception becomes disciplined, your emotions stabilize, your judgments sharpen, and your soul aligns with reason. You stop being tossed by impressions and start steering by truth. And that's where the next step of the Stoic journey leads. Because once you perceive reality accurately, you begin to see time itself differently. The present moment, the only arena where reason and virtue exist, becomes your sole focus. But for now, remember, to master your mind. Start by mastering your perception, because every false belief you drop is one chain less around your freedom. Principle 7. The eternal present, living in the now, Stoic style. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Confine yourself to the present." He wasn't preaching mystical mindfulness or poetic calm. He was giving a surgeon's command. The Stoics understood that only one sliver of time is real, the now. The past is gone, the future is unborn, and only this infinitesimal point, this mathematical line between what was and what will be, exists. Everything else is memory or imagination, shadows mistaken for reality. To the Stoic, this isn't a comforting idea, it's a challenge. If the present is the only place you can think, choose, and act, then wasting it is a kind of moral negligence. You can't live in yesterday's achievements or tomorrow's fears. You can only live rightly now. The now has no duration, but it's infinite in opportunity. Within that razor-thin boundary lies the entire scope of human excellence. Marcus Aurelius meditated on this every night in his military tent. Surrounded by the noise of soldiers and the smell of damp earth, he'd remind himself, you could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. For Marcus, this wasn't morbid, it was liberating. Death wasn't an enemy waiting somewhere in the distance. It was always standing beside him, a silent advisor urging focus. When you live as though this could be your final hour, distractions fall away. The trivial dissolves. You speak carefully, act deliberately, and treat every breath as borrowed time. Seneca sharpened this insight into a blade in on the shortness of life. He wrote that life isn't short, we just waste most of it. We are not given a short life, he said, but we make it short. We squander hours as though they're infinite, while hoarding coins as if they're scarce. We guard our wallets fiercely, but let strangers steal our days without protest. For Seneca, the solution wasn't to count minutes, but to inhabit them, to live each moment so fully that time itself expands. A man who lives a single day with complete awareness, he argued, has lived more than someone who sleepwalks through a century. The Stoics' weapon against anxiety was this same truth. Worry lives in the future, an imagined world where your fears play out on a stage that doesn't exist. Your mind projects scenarios, creates outcomes, assigns emotions, and then suffers for events that never happened. The Stoic pulls the mind back to the present and asks, what virtue does this moment demand? That question is unbreakable. You can always answer it. Should you show patience, courage, humility, or reason? The present is always actionable. The future never is. This isn't fatalism, it's precision. When you act in the present, you operate in the only arena that's real. You stop negotiating with ghosts of what if and if only. The now becomes both urgent and sufficient. Every moment, no matter how ordinary, becomes an opportunity for excellence. And every breath is both a beginning and an ending, a reminder that time isn't a resource to be managed, but a fire that must be used while it burns. But to live that way, you need another discipline, one that keeps your plans grounded when reality refuses to cooperate. The Stoics called it the reserve clause, fate permitting. Principle 8. The reserve clause, fate permitting. When the Stoics made plans, they always added an invisible phrase at the end, fate permitting. Seneca would say, I will sail to Athens, if nothing prevents me. This wasn't defeatism or self-doubt. It was intellectual honesty. The Stoics understood that every action mixes your will with countless variables you can't control, weather, illness, politics, chance. You can prepare perfectly and still fail. The reserve clause is the Stoics' psychological armor against disappointment. Seneca explained it this way, I will set sail unless something prevents me. He'd train his mind to hold expectations loosely, never overpromising outcomes to himself. If storms came, he didn't rage at them. He'd already accounted for their possibility. He acted with excellence, but never with entitlement. His peace came not from success, but from integrity and preparation. Modern minds struggle with this distinction. We say, I will do X, and secretly mean X will happen. We fuse intention and outcome into one fragile illusion. When fate intervenes, we shatter. The Stoic separates them. He says, I will attempt X as best I can, and whether X happens is up to fate. That separation removes the sting from failure without weakening resolve. You still act, plan, strive, but you do so with open hands, not clenched fists. This mindset works everywhere. The athlete says, I'll play my best, if I'm healthy, if chosen, if the game proceeds. The student says, I'll study diligently, if I have time, if illness spares me, if life allows. To outsiders, this sounds like pre-excuse making. To Stoics, it's freedom from bitterness. When you already acknowledge that external outcomes are co-authored by fate, disappointment loses its poison. You can't be betrayed by what you never claimed to own. The reserve clause is also the root of a more fatty, the love of fate. When you add, if fate permits, to every plan, you're not lowering expectations, you're harmonizing with reality. You're admitting that the universe isn't your servant, but your collaborator. Whatever happens, success or setback, was part of the deal you signed when you acted. You stop fighting the script and start performing your role well, no matter where the story turns. Marcus Aurelius wrote, Do not seek for events to happen as you wish, but wish for events to happen as they do, and your life will flow smoothly. The reserve clause isn't an escape from effort. It's effort purified of illusion. You still steer your ship, but you stop cursing the wind. To live this way requires understanding the universe you're navigating, the larger order that holds every storm, every calm, every twist of fate. And that understanding rests on one word the Stoics use to explain everything: logos. Principle 9, Logos and the Cosmic City. You're a fragment of God. The Stoics believed that the universe wasn't chaos. It was a living, ordered whole governed by reason, a principle they called logos. Every flame, every atom, every human soul participated in this vast intelligence. To them, logos was both God and nature, the rational structure behind apparent disorder. This idea came from Heraclitus, the pre-Socratic philosopher who saw fire as the world's primary substance and logos as the pattern guiding its constant transformation. Fire turns to water, water to earth, earth to air, but logos keeps harmony amid the flux. The Stoics adopted this idea and expanded it. The cosmos isn't a battlefield of random events. It's a symphony of interlocking causes, each note necessary for the whole to make sense. Unlike religions that saw divinity as distant or personal, the Stoics' God was immanent, woven into the world itself. Zeus wasn't a bearded figure on a throne, but the living reason that animates everything. Your capacity for rational thought, your moral sense, your ability to choose, these aren't accidents. They're fragments of the divine logos expressing itself through you. Marcus Aurelius said, You are a little soul carrying around a corpse, but you are also a portion of Zeus. The tension of human life lies right there. You are mortal flesh animated by immortal reason. Epictetus, who was born a slave and later became a philosopher, embodied the cosmopolitan consequence of this belief. If every human contains the same divine spark, then rank, class, and status are meaningless. The emperor and the slave are made of the same fire. One may command armies, another may polish armor, but both share the same essence, reason. I am a citizen of the cosmos, Epictetus declared, not of Rome, not of Greece. That single sentence demolished the artificial walls dividing mankind centuries before the Enlightenment caught up. This cosmopolitanism wasn't sentimental idealism. It was physics and ethics fused. To harm another was to attack the logos itself, to wound the world body you belong to. Compassion, justice, and humility weren't moral add-ons. They were acts of alignment with the universe's rational order. When you cooperate with logos, you live according to nature. When you rebel, you destroy yourself. The Stoics even used logos to tackle the hardest question, the problem of evil. If the universe is governed by divine reason, why do bad things happen? Their answer was perspective. You're like a spectator sitting too close to the stage. watching one tragic scene and declaring the play senseless. You can't see the larger story. What looks like misfortune in one frame may serve harmony in the whole. The storm that sinks one ship feeds the crops of another land. The death that breaks one family preserves the balance of countless others. To the Stoic, every event has a place in the cosmic script, even if our fragmentary minds can't read it. To live with that awareness is to dissolve the illusion of separateness. You stop demanding that the universe justify itself to you. You start seeing yourself as part of a divine intelligence expressing itself through change, decay, and renewal. You are not a stranger in chaos. You are a node of order in an infinite web of reason. And once you truly grasp that, mortality itself begins to look different. Because if you are a fragment of the divine, then death isn't annihilation, it's reintegration. The spark returns to the fire. The breath returns to the wind. But before facing that truth, the Stoics insisted on one thing: to remember that every present moment, every choice, every thought, participates in that eternal order. Principle 10. Memento Mori, death as life's advisor. Let us prepare our minds as if we'd come to the very end of life, Seneca wrote. To the Stoic, Memento Mori, remember you must die, isn't a dark obsession with death, but a luminous reminder of how to live. Death isn't waiting somewhere in the distance. It's always here, shaping every decision, every emotion, every wasted hour. It's not meant to depress you. It's meant to slice through delusion, to remind you that what matters is finite, and what doesn't matter is noise. Marcus Aurelius practiced this discipline before dawn. In the cold camps along the Danube, with soldiers snoring and torches flickering, he'd tell himself, "You could leave life right now." He didn't mean it as despair, but as calibration. If this were his last sunrise, would he spend it angry about a report? Anxious about a senator's gossip? Would he postpone kindness or shrink from duty? The thought stripped away everything unnecessary. What remained was clarity. Every breath became precious, every conversation sacred, every irritation meaningless. To deepen that perspective, Marcus used what he called the view from above, hypsos. He'd imagine himself looking down from the heavens, seeing not the emperor, but a small man pacing inside a tent on a spinning planet, itself a dust mote in an endless cosmos. From that vantage, every triumph and every grievance collapsed into proportion. The Stoics didn't use cosmic perspective to feel insignificant. They used it to escape ego's distortions. When you zoom out far enough, your reputation, wealth, and anxieties vanish into invisibility. What's left is the simple, profound act of being alive right now. Seneca pushed the practice even further with his premeditation of adversity. He'd deliberately imagine loss, his property, his status, his loved ones, even his own death, not to brood, but to rehearse. The man who has anticipated disaster, he wrote, will never feel its impact. He was inoculating his mind. If you've already faced death 1,000 times in thought, its arrival can't surprise you. You stop living in denial and start living in readiness. Death loses its fangs because you've already accepted its terms. When Nero ordered Seneca's execution, the philosopher received the news calmly. He called for his friends, dictated a few final thoughts, then opened his veins in a warm bath. The scene wasn't tragic, it was serene. Seneca had rehearsed this moment every day. Death wasn't an intruder, it was an old acquaintance. The physical act of dying was merely the last sentence of a book he'd already finished writing in his mind. That is the Stoic definition of freedom, to meet death not with fear, but with recognition. Memento Mori is not about dying well, it's about living properly. Every time you remind yourself, "I must die," you realign your compass. You stop living as though you'll have infinite tomorrows and start using the only day you actually own, today. You stop postponing greatness. You stop tolerating trivialities. You stop saying later to the people who matter. Death isn't your enemy, it's your greatest teacher. It erases illusion, clarifies values, and demands presence. And that presence leads naturally into another Stoic exercise, one that complements Memento Mori, the deliberate rehearsal of loss while you're still alive. Principle 11. Negative visualization, Premeditatio Malorum. Where Memento Mori reminds you that you'll lose everything eventually, Premeditatio Malorum. The premeditation of evils trains you to lose things in imagination first. The Stoics practiced this not to wallow in fear, but to vaccinate the mind against devastation. Seneca advised, rehearse them in your mind. Exile, torture, war, shipwreck. Because when the mind has already met adversity, reality can no longer shock it. The Stoic doesn't avoid dark thoughts. He uses them strategically. When you imagine losing your home, your health, your loved ones, and then open your eyes to find them still here, gratitude floods in naturally. This is the gratitude generator of Stoicism. Most people adapt to blessings so fast they forget to see them. Hedonic adaptation numbs you to everything good. Negative visualization reverses that process. It resets your baseline to zero, so when you look around, even the smallest joy feels like abundance. Epictetus took it further. When you kiss your child, he said, whisper to yourself, tomorrow you may die. To modern ears, it sounds cruel, but to the Stoic, it's the purest form of love. When you acknowledge impermanence, you stop clinging. You stop pretending that time is endless. Every interaction becomes sacred because it could be your last. The Stoic's affection is sharper, truer, because it's built on reality, not fantasy. This practice also removes fortune's leverage over your emotions. Whatever you fear, you serve. Fortune controls those who dread her blows. But when you've rehearsed every loss, fortune loses her power. She can take what she will. You've already surrendered it in thought. What remains is peace. Negative visualization also sharpens rational decision-making. Before any venture, the wise Stoic asks, what's the worst outcome, and could I survive it? If the answer is yes, fear dissolves. If no, you reconsider. This simple calculation, so rarely done, is the antidote to most modern anxiety. People chase opportunities without confronting their risks, then panic when fate turns against them. The Stoic prepares mentally for every variable, so he's never surprised, only adaptive. It's crucial to distinguish this practice from catastrophizing. Catastrophizing is compulsive, unbounded worry. It spirals. Premeditatio Malorum is disciplined, bounded, time-limited. You don't drown in imagined misfortune. You visit it briefly, like a soldier drilling before battle. You preview, assess, and then return calmly to the present. After rehearsal comes gratitude. Seneca wrote, he robs present ills of their power who has seen their coming beforehand. You face misfortune twice only if you refuse to face it once in thought. The Stoic faces it first mentally, so when it arrives physically, it finds him ready. But to achieve this readiness, you must tackle the engine of all human unrest, desire. Because fear of loss begins with attachment, and attachment begins with untrained appetite. Principle 12. The discipline of desire, training your appetites. The Stoics saw human beings as slaves not to masters, but to their own desires. Most people live chained to the next thing they think will make them happy. More money, more approval, more pleasure. They stagger from craving to craving like addicts, never realizing the chains are self-forged. The discipline of desire breaks those chains, not by suppressing desire, but by interrogating it. Epictetus put it bluntly, if you don't get what you want, you suffer. If you get it, you fear losing it. Better to want only what you can guarantee. What can you guarantee? Not wealth, not fame, not even health. Only your character, only your virtue. That's the Stoic answer. Train desire to aim only at what's truly yours to control. Modern psychology calls it the hedonic treadmill. Every time you achieve a desire, pleasure spikes, then fades, and a new desire replaces it. You think the next milestone will finally bring satisfaction, but the horizon keeps receding. The Stoic steps off the treadmill by choosing a goal that doesn't decay with success. Virtue. Excellence of soul doesn't fade, because it isn't dependent on external conditions. You can practice justice, courage, temperance, and wisdom in poverty or in wealth, in sickness or in strength. Desire only that, and you'll never be disappointed. To reinforce this mindset, Stoics practiced voluntary discomfort. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, sometimes slept on the floor to remind himself comfort wasn't necessary. Seneca would eat plain bread, wear rough clothes, and bathe in cold water. They didn't do this for self-punishment. It was calibration. By occasionally denying luxury, they proved they didn't depend on it. The exercise shrinks fear. If you can be content with less, the loss of more can't hurt you. This same principle can be applied in daily life. The chocolate cake test, as modern Stoics might call it. When desire arises, pause. Ask, do I need this? Or am I just conditioned to want it? Will getting this improve my character? Or just give me a momentary rush? The goal isn't to reject pleasure, it's to reclaim agency. The untrained man is pulled by appetite like a puppet. The trained man chooses deliberately. Seneca illustrated this perfectly with wine. He didn't forbid drinking. He examined the motive. I drink, he said in effect, because I choose to relax with friends, not because I need wine to endure existence. The first is freedom, the second slavery. The difference isn't in the act, but in the intention. The Stoic trains desire by exposing its illusions. Desire says, when I have this, I'll be happy. Stoic reason replies, happiness isn't in the object, it's in your judgment of it. Pleasure is fleeting, excellence endures. When you master desire, you master fear, because the fear of loss dies with attachment. This discipline isn't ascetic, it's strategic. The Stoic doesn't reject beauty, wealth, or comfort. He simply refuses to kneel before them. He enjoys them when present, releases them when gone. His happiness is portable, self-contained, and invulnerable. And that's the end game of Stoicism, to want what's already yours, the ability to think rightly, act justly, and live presently. Because once your desires align with what you can control, no external force can enslave your peace. Principle 13. The indifference to pleasure and pain, Apatheia. Most people are puppets pulled by two invisible strings, pleasure and pain. They chase one and flee the other, never realizing both are chains. The Stoic cuts those strings. Apatheia, often mistranslated as apathy, doesn't mean numbness, it means freedom. Freedom from path, destructive passions born from false judgments. The Stoic doesn't suppress emotion, he purifies it. He feels deeply, but never irrationally. The common misconception is that Stoics were emotionless statues. That's a cartoon version of philosophy. In truth, they experienced what they called Eupatheia, good emotions, joy, caution, and wish. Joy for virtuous acts, caution toward moral danger, and wish for the good of all. What they sought to eliminate were the diseased emotions, fear, envy, anxiety, craving, those born not from nature, but from false belief. The Stoics' emotional discipline isn't a rejection of feeling, it's the art of feeling rightly. Epictetus proved this not through lectures, but through flesh and bone. He was once a slave under a cruel master who twisted his leg with such force that the bone snapped. Epictetus calmly warned, "You're going to break my leg." When it broke, he said simply, "See, I told you, no anger, no outrage, just observation." Pain occurred, but suffering didn't. Because pain is physical, inevitable. Suffering is psychological, optional. It arises when you demand that reality be other than it is. The Stoic refuses that demand. This is the great distinction. Pain is sensation, suffering is resistance. Pain is part of nature's design. Suffering is rebellion against it. Byron Katie's modern phrase, "loving what is," echoes this Stoic wisdom. When you resist what happens, you double your pain, once from the event, again from your judgment of it. The Stoic doesn't love pain, but he refuses to compound it with outrage or pity. Pleasure is the other half of the trap. Pursue it blindly, and you become its slave. The more you need pleasure to feel okay, the weaker you become. You start negotiating your peace with circumstance. I'll be fine when I get this meal, this drink, this praise. The Stoic reverses the equation. He enjoys pleasure when it comes, without guilt or dependence. He drinks the wine but doesn't kneel before it. He eats well but can fast without bitterness. Because when you can live equally well in both comfort and discomfort, you're untouchable. Marcus Aurelius said it simply. Things external to the soul are indifferent. You'd rather have health than illness, wealth than poverty, pleasure than pain, but neither defines virtue. They are preferred indifference. Choose them when available, release them when not. They add convenience, not meaning. Apatheia isn't a void, it's composure. It's the ability to stand still while storms rage, to feel emotion without being ruled by it. The Stoic doesn't avoid life sensations. He experiences them fully, but without attachment. Pain tests his endurance, pleasure tests his restraint. He passes both exams by staying centered. And that composure, this equanimity toward sensation, extends naturally to how he interprets the events that cause those sensations. Because if you can't control pleasure or pain, you can still control how you see them. Principle 14. The art of reframing, Euphantasioton. The Stoics believed your power lies not in events themselves, but in your interpretation of them. Between stimulus and response sits a blank canvas, and what you paint there determines your experience of life. Marcus Aurelius called this Euphantasioton, making good mental representations. To reframe isn't to lie to yourself. It's to choose the frame that reveals strength instead of despair, meaning instead of misery. Marcus captured it perfectly. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. A blocked path isn't merely an obstacle. It's a chance to practice patience, ingenuity, or courage. The event itself is neutral. The mind assigns meaning. If a door closes, the untrained mind curses fate. The Stoic mind sees training, a test of adaptability. What was meant to stop you becomes the tool that shapes you. Admiral James Stockdale, imprisoned and tortured in Vietnam for 7 years, embodied this principle. He noticed something. The optimists, the ones who said, "We'll be out by Christmas," often broke when Christmas came and freedom didn't. The survivors were the realists who accepted brutal facts, yet maintained faith in ultimate victory. This paradox later became known as the Stockdale paradox. Confront reality without illusion, but never lose hope in meaning. That's Stoic reframing, not denial, but alignment. You match perception to truth while steering it toward virtue. The Stoics applied this to every insult, every setback, every wound. Suppose someone insults you. The common response is offense, anger, pride, retaliation. The Stoic reframes. Is the insult true? Then it's feedback. Thank them for the reminder. Is it false? Then it's noise, not worth your peace. Or perhaps it reveals something, not about you, but about them, their ignorance, pain, or vanity. The insult stays the same. Your interpretation rewrites the story. This ability to pivot your perception is ultimate power. You can't stop life from hitting you, but you can decide whether each blow forges or fractures you. At its highest level, reframing becomes a more fatty love of fate. Not mere acceptance, but active embrace. Nietzsche borrowed the phrase, but the Stoics lived it. When rain ruined their plans, they said, "Good. It's an opportunity to read, to rest, to adapt." When illness struck, they said, "Good. A chance to test endurance." The Stoic doesn't demand the world change to fit his desires. He changes his desires to fit the world. This isn't self-deception, it's self-mastery. Reality is a given. Interpretation is choice. The Stoics' lens doesn't distort reality. It clarifies it by removing ego's fog. Through reframing, every event becomes raw material for virtue. But this mental alchemy requires a tool, precision in language. Because how you describe events determines how you feel about them. Principle 15. Precise language, stripping away opinion from fact. Marcus Aurelius practiced a linguistic surgery, separating description from judgment. He'd strip away all emotional coloration and describe things as they are, nothing more. The purpose wasn't detachment for its own sake. It was purification of perception. If your words are polluted with exaggeration, your thoughts will be too. He called it the exercise of speaking according to nature. Take his famous examples. The purple robes of emperors. Sheeps will dyed with shellfish secretions. Wine. Fermented grape juice. Sex. Friction of membranes and a spasm. Crude? No, accurate. The glamour, prestige, and obsession are mental paint we apply to neutral facts. Strip them off, and the emotions they fuel, envy, lust, greed, lose their grip. This precision is ancient Stoicism's version of modern semantic therapy. General semantics and cognitive behavioral therapy later rediscovered the same truth. Language shapes thought. Say, I am depressed, and you fuse identity with mood. Say, I feel sad right now, and you create space between self and sensation. The first traps you, the second liberates you. The Stoics already knew this 2 millennia ago. Consider the compliment trap. Someone praises you, and you soar. Someone criticizes you, and you crumble. Both reactions reveal dependence on verbal noise. The Stoic reframes even flattery in physical terms. This person moved air through their throat, creating vibrations that struck my eardrums, producing sensations interpreted as approval. Instantly, the emotional charge evaporates. The evaluation was never in the sound. It was in your interpretation. Albert Ellis, founder of rational emotive behavior therapy, built his system on this exact Stoic insight. Remove should and must from your internal dialogue. He should respect me becomes, I prefer respect, but I don't require it for peace. This shouldn't happen becomes, I'd rather it didn't, but it did. So how do I respond virtuously? Each linguistic shift replaces demand with preference, illusion with reality. Marcus knew words can enslave. When you label events as disaster, failure, or betrayal, you create emotional storms from neutral weather. But when you describe them factually, my proposal wasn't selected, my friend didn't return my call, rain fell on my plans, you regain clarity. The less you dramatize, the more power you have. Language, to the Stoic, is moral architecture. Sloppy words build weak minds. Precise words build fortresses. Every sentence either strengthens your command of reality or cedes it to delusion. And that's why this practice isn't pedantry, it's spiritual hygiene. The Stoic cleans his speech as he cleans his mind. He removes exaggeration, deletes assumptions, and names things as they are, not as he wishes them to be. Because the moment your language mirrors truth, your mind aligns with reason. That precision in description, this refusal to lie to yourself, becomes the foundation of inner peace. Once your words stop betraying you, your thoughts follow suit. And when your thoughts are purified of distortion, you begin to live not in fantasy, but in harmony with yourself, with others, with nature itself. Principle 16. Prosoche, continuous attention to the present. The Stoics called it prosoche, the discipline of continuous attention. Not occasional mindfulness, not fleeting awareness, but a constant, living vigilance over your own thoughts. Pierre Hadot, the great interpreter of Stoicism, called this the true core of the entire philosophy. The practice of not letting your mind wander into useless fantasy, rumination, or worry, but maintaining lucid awareness of your judgments in real time. Left unattended, the mind is like an unguarded fortress. Impressions slip in through every gate. One moment, you're reliving yesterday's humiliation. The next, you're rehearsing tomorrow's argument. Hours pass, but you haven't lived a minute of them. Prosoche is the act of catching this drift. The Stoic notices it happening, smiles at it, and gently asks, "What virtue does this present moment ask of me?" That single question snaps the mind out of autopilot. The past is memory, the future is imagination, but virtue lives only here, now. Marcus Aurelius trained this attention every day. "Nowhere can you find a more peaceful retreat than your own mind," he wrote, especially if it contains thoughts which, merely by looking at them, give you instant ease. That inner citadel, his calm, clear awareness, was always accessible, but only through discipline. When the emperor withdrew into himself, it wasn't escapism. It was inspection. He was returning from the chaos of impressions to the order of reason. Prosoche isn't suppression. You don't force thoughts away, you observe them. To suppress is to struggle, to tighten the very knot you're trying to untie. The Stoic stance is observation without identification, not, I am a failure, but, I'm having the thought that I'm a failure. That subtle distinction creates space. In that space, reason breathes. You're no longer consumed by the thought. You're watching it arise, persist, and fade. Epictetus compared this vigilance to commanding a besieged fortress. Every moment, impressions, phantasiae, arrive at the gate, demanding entry. Your job isn't to panic or hide, it's to inspect them. Some are allies, true, useful, aligned with reason. Others are enemies, false, seductive, destructive. You must test each one before granting assent. See that you don't let in an impression without first saying, "Wait, let me see who you are and where you come from," Epictetus warned. The mind left unguarded becomes a conquered city. The mind guarded becomes unshakable. This practice demands effort, but like any discipline, it becomes natural with repetition. Each time you catch yourself drifting into fantasy or fear, you're strengthening the muscle of awareness. Each time you pause and return to the present, you reclaim sovereignty. Eventually, Prosoche becomes second nature, attention so stable that even chaos can't distract it. And that stability gives rise to the next layer of Stoic mastery, catching destructive emotions before they seize control. Principle 17. Catching the first movement, preventing passion's cascade. The Stoics dissected emotion like surgeons. They realized that destructive passions don't appear fully formed, they develop in stages. By mapping those stages, they discovered the precise moment where intervention is possible. They called this process the first movement, the instant before passion erupts. Here's how it works. Stage 1 is Apatheia, the involuntary physiological reaction. Your heart races, your face flushes, adrenaline surges. This isn't sin or weakness, it's biology. Even the Stoic sage feels this. Epictetus said plainly that the sage will flinch at a sudden noise or recoil from pain. That's nature. The difference lies in stage 2, judgment. After the automatic reaction comes interpretation. You decide what the impression means. Someone insults you. Your face heats. That's stage 1. Then your mind whispers, "This is intolerable," or "They've disrespected me." That's stage 2, the crucial hinge. If you assent to that thought, emotion gains momentum. Stage 3. Anger builds, reason blurs. Stage 4. Passion consumes you. You lash out, say something stupid, damage your integrity. But if you intervene at stage 2, the cascade collapses. You notice the flush in your face and ask, "What is this really?" Words. Air vibrations reaching my ears. Instantly, the illusion of threat dissolves. The physiological reaction fades, leaving awareness intact. Seneca devoted an entire treatise on anger to this practice. He called anger temporary madness. His advice was surgical. When you feel its first stirrings, do nothing. Sit down if you're standing. Lower your voice if you're shouting. Delay your response. Every second of pause allows reason to retake command. The fire starves without fuel. This principle applies to every destructive emotion: fear, envy, lust, anxiety. They all begin as sparks of impression, not infernos. The problem isn't feeling the spark, it's fanning it into flame. The Stoic doesn't aim to feel nothing. He aims to feel rightly, to interrupt passion before it rewrites his mind. You can only do this through constant awareness. And that awareness is trained through Prosoche, the discipline of attention. You watch your thoughts as they form, catch the false judgment early, and dissolve it before it matures into suffering. When you master this, emotions lose their tyranny. They arise, they pass, they no longer own you. But to do this consistently, you must understand the Stoic theory of emotion itself, the belief that every emotion is not a random feeling, but a judgment. Principle 18. Emotions as judgments, the Stoic theory of passion. Modern psychology often treats emotions like weather, unpredictable storms that come and go, beyond control. The Stoics disagreed completely. They argued that emotions are not invaders, they're verdicts. Every emotion, no matter how overwhelming, contains a judgment about good and evil. Change the judgment, and the emotion dissolves. Chrysippus, the great logician of the Stoa, described passions as excessive impulses rooted in false judgments. Fear is the belief that something bad is coming. Anger is the belief that injustice occurred and retaliation is justified. Grief is the belief that something truly good has been lost forever. But what if those underlying judgments are wrong? What if death, poverty, and insult aren't evils at all, but neutral events? Then fear, anger, and despair lose their foundation. They collapse under inspection. Take the example of divorce. Your spouse leaves you. The event is neutral. It simply happened. Devastation arises from the judgment. I can't live without them. This shouldn't have happened. My life is ruined. Change the judgments. They acted according to their nature. I still control my character. This creates new possibilities, and devastation transforms into sadness, a natural emotion, without descending into despair, an irrational passion. The Stoic doesn't aim for numbness. He aims for accuracy. This distinction between the feeling and the false judgment beneath it is the key to emotional freedom. It's not the event that wounds you, but your interpretation of what it means. Change the meaning, and you change the emotion. That's what separates Stoicism from Buddhism. Both philosophies teach equanimity, but they diagnose the disease differently. Buddhism says desire itself causes suffering. Stoicism says false judgment causes suffering. You can desire virtuously, desire to be just, wise, courageous, but you can't judge falsely without consequence. The Stoic doesn't kill desire, he educates it. Centuries later, modern therapy vindicated this ancient insight. Aaron Beck and Albert Ellis, founders of cognitive therapy, built their systems on Stoic logic. Ellis openly cited Epictetus's line, "It's not things that disturb us, but our judgments about things." That sentence became the backbone of cognitive behavioral therapy, the most effective psychological treatment ever tested. The so-called cognitive revolution was simply Stoicism rediscovered under fluorescent lights. The Stoic view of emotion isn't abstract philosophy. It's a manual for mental engineering. When fear arises, ask, what judgment creates this? When anger surges, ask, what assumption have I accepted as true? Each time you question a passion, it weakens. Each time you replace false judgment with truth, emotion aligns with reason. Marcus Aurelius practiced this nightly. He'd review his day, identify where emotion distorted perception, and rewrite the judgment. If he'd felt irritation toward someone, he'd recall, they act according to their beliefs, just as I do mine. Instantly, irritation transformed into understanding. That is Stoic emotional alchemy, transforming base passion into rational insight. The ultimate goal isn't to suppress emotion, but to integrate it. The Stoic's heart doesn't turn to stone, it becomes steady. He feels joy, but without intoxication, grief, but without collapse, anger, but without madness. He still feels, but every feeling is filtered through reason's light. Emotions, then, are not enemies. They are signals. They reveal where your judgments have strayed from truth. The Stoic listens, learns, and corrects course. And in doing so, he achieves what all of philosophy aims for, not the absence of emotion, but the harmony of soul. Principle 19. The discipline of action, Kathekonta, and appropriate acts. Stoic philosophy isn't armchair contemplation, it's a call to action. The Stoics believe that philosophy must manifest in Kathekonta, appropriate acts. These aren't abstract moral gestures, but role-based duties. What this exact moment demands of you as a parent, a citizen, a friend, a human being. The discipline of action means performing these duties with excellence, detached from outcomes. Epictetus hammered this point relentlessly. Philosophy isn't about talking cleverly, but living rightly. You can read all the scrolls in the world, but if you fail to act with integrity in the face of daily duties, your philosophy is hollow. Stoic ethics lives through behavior, how you handle your work, relationships, and obligations. Each moment a chance to express your values through deliberate action. But not all actions are equal. The Stoics distinguished between Kathekonta, preferred, fitting actions, and katarthomata, perfect actions done from complete wisdom and virtue. Returning borrowed money, caring for your parents, defending your community, these are Kathekonta. They're appropriate to your nature and role, but they only become virtuous when done with right understanding and intention. In Stoicism, morality is never just external, it's internal alignment between choice and reason. The act matters, but the character behind the act matters infinitely more. Epictetus emphasized role ethics as the foundation for clarity in action. You are not a generic person. You are a son, a brother, a father, a friend, a citizen, a teacher. Each of these identities carries duties that define what's appropriate for you in a given moment. The confusion and anxiety of modern life. What career to choose, what relationships to prioritize, what to sacrifice, often arise because people forget to ask the most basic Stoic question. What role am I playing now, and what does that role demand? When roles conflict, say, between duty to family and duty to country, wisdom must mediate. There's no formula. You act as reason directs, understanding that perfection isn't possible, only effort is. But clarity about your roles eliminates most existential drift. You stop living reactively and start living deliberately. Marcus Aurelius practiced this discipline each morning before dawn. As emperor of the world's largest empire, surrounded by intrigue, betrayal, and power, he began his day with a meditation on human behavior. I shall meet people who are ungrateful, violent, treacherous, envious, unsocial. But I have seen the beauty of good and the ugliness of evil, and I know the wrongdoer is related to me, sharing not blood but intelligence and divinity. None can harm me, for no one can implicate me in ugliness. This wasn't passive resignation, it was strategic armor. He reminded himself of what the day would bring so he could act appropriately, without surprise or resentment. By rehearsing the roles he'd play, ruler, philosopher, father, human being, he anchored himself in purpose. The Stoic carpenter embodies this principle perfectly. His duty isn't merely to produce a table, but to produce it excellently. The final product may burn in a fire, be stolen, or be underappreciated. That's external, indifferent. His real work is his craftsmanship, his honesty, his attention to detail. The virtue behind the action is his true product, and that can never be destroyed. The discipline of action, then, is simple but ruthless. Identify your role, discern what's appropriate, and execute with integrity, regardless of outcome. Fate handles results. You handle effort. But to act rightly, you must understand what you owe others, and what justice really means. Principle 20. Justice as kindness. Oikeiosis extended. For the Stoics, justice wasn't a sterile concept of law or fairness. It was active kindness grounded in the understanding that every human being is your kin. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "What's bad for the hive is bad for the bee." You can't thrive in isolation because you are the hive. Your well-being and the community's well-being are the same equation. This wasn't moral preaching, it was biological realism. Just as bees naturally build hives and birds build nests, humans naturally form societies. To live according to nature, as the Stoics demanded, means to live cooperatively, contributing to the social organism that sustains you. To withdraw in selfishness, cynicism, or cruelty isn't independence, it's pathology. Isolation is rebellion against nature. Epictetus captured this in his teaching on Oikeiosis, the process of natural affiliation. You begin by caring for yourself, then family, then community, then humanity. The wise man progressively expands his circle of concern until he sees all rational beings as extensions of himself, not through forced altruism, but through recognition of shared nature. We are parts of the same body, Marcus said. If you cut yourself off from others, you amputate yourself from the whole. Unlike modern individualism, the Stoics saw no conflict between self-interest and communal good. Properly understood, they're identical. When you harm another, you harm the system you depend on. When you act unjustly, you poison the very well you drink from. This isn't sentiment, it's mathematical truth. A just society is stable, an unjust one collapses, taking everyone with it. Marcus Aurelius, ruling an empire rife with corruption, carried this philosophy into governance. He could have been a tyrant, his power was absolute, but he chose to be a servant of justice. During conspiracies and uprisings, he often pardoned his enemies, understanding that revenge would rot the state from within. He funded welfare programs, supported education, and worked tirelessly despite illness. He didn't enjoy these duties, but he saw them as expressions of cosmic citizenship, his role in the larger organism of humanity. Forgiveness, for a Stoic, isn't softness, it's clarity. When someone wrongs you, the Stoic view is that they act from ignorance, not malice. They think their action serves them, but it harms them most of all. Understanding this removes the poison of resentment. You respond justly, not vengefully, because you see their error as a sickness, not an offense. To bear with the ignorant is justice, Marcus wrote. They act as their understanding permits. This isn't naive optimism. It's strategic realism. By seeing others as fallible kin rather than enemies, you maintain calm and effectiveness. You stop wasting energy on hatred and redirect it toward right action. Justice, in the Stoic sense, is enlightened pragmatism, the recognition that compassion sustains order. But to live justly, you must understand the raw material you're dealing with, human nature itself, rational but flawed, divine yet forgetful. Principle 21. Understanding the nature of people, rational but fallible. Marcus Aurelius began each morning with a mental exercise. Today I shall meet people who are meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, deceitful, jealous, and surly. He wasn't being pessimistic. He was being prepared. He understood that expecting universal virtue is foolish. But understanding why people fail at virtue allows you to deal with them effectively and without bitterness. The Stoics believed all humans share the same spark of reason, the logos. Every person has access to wisdom, just as every seed has the potential to become a tree. But most never develop it. They're like athletes born with perfect musculature who never train, capable of greatness but trapped in mediocrity. This is humanity's tragedy, not its evil. From this follows a radical Stoic insight. No one does wrong willingly. Socrates said it first, and the Stoics built their ethics around it. Every person pursues what they believe is good. The thief steals because he believes wealth will bring security. The tyrant kills because he believes power ensures safety. They're wrong, but sincerely wrong. Ignorance, not malevolence, drives most vice. This doesn't excuse wrongdoing, it explains it. Understanding the cause allows you to respond rationally instead of emotionally. Instead of asking, "How could they do this to me?" you ask, "What false belief drives their action?" You can correct it through education if possible, or simply protect yourself if not. Either way, you avoid poisoning your mind with outrage. Marcus used a natural metaphor for this clarity. It's natural for the fig tree to bear figs, for the scorpion to sting. So it's natural for humans to make mistakes. You don't curse the fig tree or hate the scorpion. You understand their nature and act accordingly. When someone lies or cheats, the Stoic doesn't collapse in moral shock. He expected it. Preparation replaces disappointment. In practical terms, this understanding transforms how you handle betrayal, insult, or manipulation. When someone wrongs you, you analyze rather than personalize. They acted from their character, not because you deserved it. You can protect your boundaries without descending into resentment. Their failure doesn't have to become yours. This mental framing, rational but fallible humanity, eliminates both naivety and misanthropy. You no longer expect saints, but you also stop despising sinners. You navigate society with calm realism, forgiving when possible, firm when necessary, detached always. Marcus Aurelius mastered this as emperor. Surrounded by opportunists, liars, and assassins, he still wrote, "People exist for one another. Teach them or bear with them." That's Stoic leadership, seeing humanity's flaws without hating humanity itself. When you truly grasp human nature, you stop taking behavior personally. You see every act as the product of ignorance or wisdom, and you respond accordingly, without losing your inner equilibrium. Understanding others, then, isn't sentiment, it's strategy. It's how you maintain clarity and compassion in a chaotic world. Principle 22. Freedom from opinion, the tyranny of reputation. Epictetus once said, "If someone speaks badly of you, consider whether they speak the truth. If so, reform yourself. If not, laugh." In those few lines lies one of Stoicism's most liberating insights: freedom from opinion. Most people are enslaved to the thoughts of others, constructing their identity from reflections in 1,000 social mirrors. They rise and fall with approval and criticism. The Stoic refuses that slavery. His sense of worth comes only from virtue, his judgments, his choices, his actions. Reputation, whether glowing or damning, is an indifferent, pleasant if favorable, irrelevant if not. Marcus Aurelius was brutally clear about this. The opinion of 10,000 men is of no value if none of them know anything about the subject. The majority of people, he observed, lack wisdom, discipline, and clarity. So why hand them the keys to your peace? If a child mocked your professional work, you'd smile at their ignorance. The Stoic extends that same patience to all external judgment. Whether it comes from a stranger online or a senator in the Roman Forum, opinion has no power unless you grant it assent. Cato the Younger made this principle a living test. He deliberately wore unfashionable clothing, rejecting the rich purple fabrics of Rome. He walked barefoot in public, inviting ridicule. When criticized, he'd calmly ask, "Is it true?" If it was, he'd correct himself. If not, the insult fell dead at his feet. This wasn't performance, it was purification. He wanted to know that his virtue stood independent of applause or condemnation. Most people collapse under disapproval. Cato trained himself to remain unmoved by it. The Stoics understood that chasing reputation is the most exhausting and futile of all pursuits. Reputation doesn't exist in reality. It's a collection of flickering neural patterns in the minds of others. You can't control them, you can't see them, and they change by the hour. Yet people spend lifetimes trying to manage this invisible empire of perception. Epictetus called it madness to try to control what belongs to others. You can control your character, your thoughts, choices, and integrity. Your reputation lives in strangers' heads. Trying to control it is like shouting at the wind to blow straighter. Modern life has turned this ancient trap into an industry. Social media monetizes your craving for validation. Every like, every view, every retweet is a microdose of approval. The algorithm becomes your new master, dictating what you post, how you speak, even what you think. The Stoic sees this clearly. Reputation is digital slavery. The cure? Act according to your values. Post what reflects your principles, and then close the app. The act itself is complete. The feedback is irrelevant. Epictetus told his students, "Do not seek that things happen as you wish, but wish them to happen as they do." Apply that to reputation. Don't wish to be praised. Wish only to be good. Praise will come or not. It's irrelevant. What matters is that you acted virtuously, said the truth, did the work. Character is reality. Reputation is rumor. The former is fully yours. The latter never was. If you truly grasp that, you become untouchable. People can misjudge you, slander you, worship you, or ignore you. It changes nothing. You are who you are when no one's watching. Everything else is noise. Freedom from opinion doesn't mean arrogance or indifference to feedback. The Stoic examines criticism rationally. Is it accurate? If yes, improvement follows. If no, indifference follows. Either way, peace follows. When you detach your identity from reputation, you regain ownership of your life. You stop performing and start living. And once that freedom is gained, something profound becomes possible, turning your gaze inward towards self-examination, the only judgment that truly matters. Principle 23. The Evening Review. Examining your day like a Stoic. Seneca advised, the mind must be called to account each day. Every night, before sleep, he conducted a mental audit, not as punishment, but as alignment. He'd lie awake in darkness and ask himself 3 questions. What bad habit did I cure today? What vice did I resist? In what way am I better? He wasn't aiming for perfection. He was calibrating direction. For the Stoic, progress isn't measured by distance traveled, but by trajectory maintained. This evening review was not an invention of Seneca alone. Epictetus inherited it from Pythagoras, who instructed his students to never let sleep close your weary eyes before reviewing the actions of your day. What did I do wrong? What did I do right? What did I fail to do? The tone is analytical, never emotional. You're not condemning yourself. You're training your faculty of judgment. The Stoic mind is an athlete's body. Repetition builds precision. The effectiveness of this practice lies in specificity. Vague reflection, I was impatient today, is useless. Precise reflection, when my daughter interrupted my writing, I snapped instead of remembering her need for attention, creates a target for improvement. The Stoic treats his moral growth like a craftsman refining his skill, hammering imperfections, polishing roughness. Seneca compared the unexamined life to a ship without a compass. You might feel motion, but you're drifting aimlessly. The evening review reorients you to your moral north. It turns philosophy from abstraction into practice. Epictetus emphasized emotional neutrality in review. Don't gloat over success or despair over failure. Record, analyze, adjust. Excess pride inflates the ego. Excess guilt paralyzes the will. The Stoic seeks clarity, not comfort. You are not the same person tonight as you were this morning. That's progress enough, if you've paid attention. The Stoic also understood reinforcement psychology long before modern science. Every time you resist anger or act with courage, you strengthen that neural pathway. So the evening review includes celebration. Not indulgent pride, but quiet acknowledgement. When you notice you caught yourself before an outburst, write it down. The brain learns through reward. Virtue grows through awareness. This nightly ritual transforms moral development from vague aspiration into data-driven self-mastery. It's cognitive accountability. By reviewing, you strengthen the connection between principle and action. You see your own mind as an object of study, an instrument to be tuned daily. And this daily reflection connects to a broader Stoic insight. Philosophy isn't a subject you study, it's medicine you take. Principle 24. Philosophy as medicine, Therapeia for the soul. The Stoics weren't academics debating abstractions in ivory towers. They were physicians of the soul. The Greek term Therapeia means therapy, care, or healing. Philosophy, for them, was precisely that, a medical practice for the mind. Epictetus opened his lectures with brutal honesty. Men, the lecture hall of the philosopher is a hospital. You ought not to walk out of it in pleasure, but in pain. Why pain? Because healing hurts. The Stoic diagnosis was uncompromising. The untrained mind is diseased. It suffers from false beliefs. Thinking external things like wealth, fame, or approval determine happiness. The symptoms are anxiety, rage, envy, greed, depression. The cure is philosophical reasoning, daily applied until clarity becomes habit. The patient who refuses treatment, who clings to illusions and emotional indulgence, remains sick. Philosophy doesn't promise comfort. It prescribes truth. And truth, when first swallowed, often burns like medicine on a raw wound. But it cleanses. Seneca compared the mind's therapy to treating an infection. No man can heal his own wound without looking at it. Philosophy forces you to look, without flinching, at your fears, attachments, and hypocrisies. The moment you name them, they begin to lose power. That's the Stoic version of diagnosis. But treatment requires dosage. You can't read one passage of Marcus Aurelius and expect enlightenment. Just as no antibiotic works in a single pill, Stoic medicine demands daily application. Every morning, reflection. Every evening, review. Throughout the day, attention to impressions. The false judgments of the mind are constant. So must be the counteragent. Chrysippus, the great systematizer of Stoicism, wrote over 700 books, not to show off his intellect, but to provide endless variations of the same medicine. Humans forget quickly. We relapse daily into vanity, fear, distraction. Philosophy must be reapplied from different angles to reach every infection of the soul. Repetition isn't redundancy, it's reinforcement. Epictetus's Enchiridion, literally meaning handbook, wasn't a metaphor. It was a pocket-sized emergency kit. Students carried it everywhere, so when insulted, injured, or frightened, they could recall, what is up to me? What is not? Marcus Aurelius's meditations served the same function. Private therapy notes, never meant for publication, written in the trenches of power and fatigue. They weren't literary, they were medical records. Philosophy as therapy transforms how you approach learning. You stop asking, is this interesting? And start asking, does this heal me? Each Stoic principle becomes a pill. Memento Mori for fear, dichotomy of control for anxiety, reserve clause for frustration, Oikeiosis for loneliness. To live without philosophy, the Stoics believed, is to live unmedicated in a world full of mental infection. You might function, but you'll slowly deteriorate, your peace eroded by false values and chaotic thinking. The cure exists, but like all medicine, it only works if taken regularly. And this medical model has a final demand: honesty. No healing without self-confrontation. Most people don't want medicine, they want sedation. They want to feel better without changing anything. The Stoic doctor refuses that prescription. He insists, you must see what's sick in you, or I cannot help you. When philosophy becomes therapy, every day becomes a treatment session. You notice symptoms, anger, worry, craving, and immediately apply the correct principle. You don't wait for crisis, you inoculate against it. Over time, the mind stabilizes. Calm becomes the default state, not the exception. That's the goal of Stoicism, not emotionless apathy, but health. A mind functioning according to nature, rational, clear, free. Philosophy is medicine. And like any medicine, its power depends entirely on whether you take it. Principle 25. The fence of the self, recognizing your boundaries. Epictetus taught his students to imagine a fence drawn around themselves. Inside that fence are your thoughts, judgments, and choices, everything that truly belongs to you. Outside that fence are all externals, other people's actions, events, outcomes, weather, fortune, death. Most human suffering comes from confusing the two. We either jump the fence trying to control what isn't ours, or we let externals breach the fence and dictate our peace. The Stoic commits neither error. He guards his inner citadel with discipline, maintaining the boundary between what he controls and what he doesn't. Epictetus called this the foundation of freedom. The moment you allow your mood, your values, or your peace to depend on externals, you've handed your sovereignty to chaos. If your serenity depends on the approval of others, you've built your fortress out of paper. If it depends on health, wealth, or weather, it's a fortress on sand. But if it depends on your own faculty of judgment, your power to interpret and choose, you're unbreakable. The two great errors define almost every unhappy life. The first is trying to control externals, forcing people to behave a certain way, demanding outcomes from the universe, resenting fate when it disobeys. The second is letting externals control internals, letting a bad day, a cruel word, or a lost opportunity dictate your inner climate. The Stoic trains himself to commit neither. He accepts full responsibility for his inner world and complete acceptance of the outer one. The beauty of this principle is that it levels all social hierarchies. Epictetus, born a slave, and Marcus Aurelius, emperor of Rome, lived on opposite extremes of human fortune. Yet their freedom was identical. Epictetus's leg was broken by his master, but his will remained his own. Marcus commanded legions, yet refused to let the throne intoxicate his mind. Both lived behind the same fence. Their external circumstances differed radically. Their internal sovereignty was identical. This proves that the fence isn't metaphorical. It's real, measurable, and absolute. Epictetus used to say, when you are disturbed, it is not things that trouble you, but your opinions about things. That's the fence in action. The event happens outside the wall. Your interpretation of it, your judgment, happens inside. The moment you forget that distinction, the world storms your gates. People waste enormous energy demanding permission from reality. Why did this happen to me? This shouldn't have happened. But reality doesn't ask for your consent. It operates by its own laws. The Stoic flips the script. The universe owes you nothing, and you owe it your best response. You don't need reality's permission to maintain your virtue. The fence enforces mutual sovereignty. You let the universe be what it is, and you remain who you are. The Stoic mind runs on a kind of energy accounting. Every minute spent resenting weather, politics, or another person's opinion is energy stolen from self-mastery. Every time you obsess over something you can't change, you weaken your capacity to improve what you can. The arithmetic is brutal but simple. Does worrying about traffic improve your character? Does anger at gossip refine your wisdom? Every unit of attention wasted on externals is theft from your inner capital. The fence of the self isn't isolation, it's focus. You still engage with the world, but without confusion of ownership. You cultivate the garden inside your fence, your thoughts, intentions, responses, and let the seasons outside shift as they will. Storms come and go. Your inner soil remains fertile. This fence is peace, not because it shields you from hardship, but because it defines exactly where your freedom begins and ends. And within those boundaries lies the entirety of your power. Principle 26. The view from above, cosmic perspective. Marcus Aurelius often practiced what the Stoics called hypsos, the view from above. When overwhelmed by stress, anger, or vanity, he would mentally rise above himself, higher and higher, until the noise of human life shrank into silence. From that altitude, his own concerns looked like what they truly were, fleeting disturbances in an incomprehensibly vast cosmos. This exercise wasn't escapism. It was proportion. Close your eyes. See yourself sitting here, in this moment. Now rise a few meters above, looking down at the room. Rise higher. See your neighborhood, your city, your country. Rise further still, until Earth curves beneath you, a blue and white marble spinning silently in blackness. From this vantage, the argument that ruined your morning, the email that triggered anxiety, the political outrage you can't stop checking, all dissolve into trivial patterns of chemical activity inside a single human brain on a pale blue dot orbiting an ordinary star. This isn't nihilism, it's perspective. The Stoic doesn't say nothing matters. He says most things matter less than your emotion suggests. The view from above restores right proportion. Your daughter's scraped knee still matters, for compassion, for care, but it doesn't threaten the order of the universe. Understanding both scales at once allows you to respond appropriately without being consumed. Marcus applied this perspective even amid war. Commanding legions on the Danube, burdened by plague and betrayal, he practiced rising above the battlefield in imagination. From the height of the stars, the entire empire was a flicker of light, the army's tiny ripples in time's current. He reminded himself that 1,000 years hence, none of it would exist. This wasn't fatalism, it was focus. Seeing the vastness of time and space allowed him to concentrate on the only meaningful task, do the next right thing. The view from above also dissolves ego. When insulted, imagine the cosmic frame. One primate made air vibrations at another primate on a rock hurtling through space. The power of the insult evaporates. You don't deny meaning, you assign accurate meaning. The Stoic doesn't suppress emotion, he calibrates it. This exercise is the antidote to self-importance. It punctures the illusion that the world revolves around your narrative. You realize that your struggles, your ambitions, even your lifespan, are microscopic, yet within that smallness lies freedom. Because once you see scale clearly, you stop taking yourself so seriously. You gain the calm humility to serve your role with excellence, then step off stage when time demands it. From the cosmic perspective, the Stoic learns equanimity. Life's triumphs and humiliations become equal waves on the same ocean. You still care, but you no longer cling. You act diligently, love deeply, but hold everything lightly. aware that both you and all you cherish are temporary visitors in an eternal flow. And that realization leads directly into the next Stoic insight, the river of time itself. Principle 27. The river of time, Panta Rhei. Heraclitus's phrase Panta Rhei, everything flows, became one of Stoicism's deepest metaphysical truths. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Time is a river, a violent current of events. One thing no sooner comes into sight than it's swept away, and another takes its place, and that too will be swept away." To live wisely is to stand calmly on the bank of that river, neither trying to stop its current nor being dragged beneath it. The Stoic sees that impermanence carries a double lesson. First, nothing lasts, so clinging creates suffering. Second, nothing lasts, so pain and hardship also pass. The same truth that removes illusion also delivers comfort. When joy arrives, savor it, because it's fleeting. When suffering arrives, endure it, because it's fleeting too. The Stoic's peace doesn't depend on what flows by, but on his relationship to the flow itself. Marcus used this insight constantly. He reminded himself that in 100 years, everyone he knew, friends, enemies, critics, would be dust. In 1,000 years, Rome itself might be ruins. In 10,000, even memory of humanity might vanish. Rather than despair, this filled him with serenity. "Consider how swiftly all things vanish," he wrote. "Bodies into the earth, memories into time. When you see existence through that lens, pettiness becomes impossible. What remains meaningful after that cosmic erasure? Only virtue, character, and love, the qualities that belong to the present and require no audience." Impermanence isn't loss, it's compression. It gives urgency to goodness. The beauty of a snowflake lies in its fragility. Its melting doesn't diminish its perfection, it completes it. Your life, equally transient, gains meaning not in duration but in intensity of presence. If you lived forever, you'd postpone everything. Mortality concentrates attention, forcing you to live deliberately. Seneca called wasted time the greatest theft. "Life is long if you know how to use it," he said. Most people act as if time were infinite, spending it on trivial resentment, idle distraction, or endless consumption. The Stoic knows time is the only non-renewable resource. He guards it like treasure, not by rushing, but by awareness. Every hour you spend conscious of impermanence is an hour fully lived. This understanding transforms how you handle both success and failure. Achievements lose their arrogance. Pain loses its sting. Both are temporary eddies in the river. You neither cling to pleasure nor curse misfortune. You simply let the current carry what it must. The river of time doesn't take from you. It is you. You're a wave within it, rising and falling according to nature. The ego resists that truth, wanting permanence, wanting to freeze the flow. The Stoic accepts it, and in that acceptance, paradoxically, finds freedom. Nothing is static. Nothing is yours to keep. But every moment, however brief, is yours to live. Recognize that, and you stop drowning in time. You begin to flow with it. Principle 28. The fluid self, no fixed identity. The Stoics understood a truth that modern psychology still wrestles with. There is no permanent self. You are not a static entity, but an unfolding process. Cells dying and regenerating, memories reconfiguring, beliefs evolving. The you who existed 10 years ago is dead. The you reading these words will die too, replaced by another version shaped by new experiences. To cling to a fixed identity is to fight the current of existence itself. The Stoic maintains consistency of character, virtue, but releases all attachment to personality. Epictetus and Chrysippus would have recognized the famous paradox of the ship of Theseus long before it became a thought experiment. If every plank of a ship is replaced over time, is it still the same ship? The Stoics applied this question inward. Every cell in your body has turned over since childhood. Every neural connection in your brain has rewired. Every belief has been tested. Every memory has been reconstructed and altered. So what exactly are you defending when you say, "This is who I am"? The Stoics concluded that only one aspect remains consistent across the flow of change. your rational faculty, the capacity to perceive, judge, and choose. That's your true identity, not a name, not a personality, but the power of choice. Everything else, status, habits, emotions, even temperament, is the temporary costume of your current moment in time. The tragedy of most people is that they mistake the costume for the core. They clutch old identities long after life has asked them to evolve. The athlete still trying to relive his high school glory. The executive who can't retire because her worth is chained to her title. The parent who can't stop parenting adult children. These people suffer not because life is cruel, but because they refuse transformation. The Stoic, however, knows that identity is role play. You were a student, became a worker, maybe a spouse, perhaps a parent, someday an elder. Each role demands a new expression of virtue. To cling to an obsolete version of yourself is to grip a ghost. Marcus Aurelius saw this clearly. Look at all things in terms of transformation, he wrote. Nothing loves staying and being except transformation itself. He understood that change isn't the opposite of stability. It is stability, the only kind nature offers. Resisting personal evolution is like damming a river. It only builds pressure until it breaks you. The Stoic self is fluid, but not formless. Virtue, wisdom, courage, justice, temperance is the organizing principle through which your changing roles find coherence. It's the keel of the ship, even as the planks are replaced. What defines you isn't whether you're the same person as yesterday, but whether you choose rightly today. This detachment from fixed identity brings immense freedom. When you no longer define yourself as the funny one, the successful one, or the stoic one, you can respond authentically to each moment instead of defending an image. You're not imprisoned by consistency. You can grieve deeply without betraying your strength. You can fail publicly without betraying your dignity. You can change your mind without betraying your past. Rigid self-concept is prison. Fluid self-understanding is liberation. The Stoic doesn't ask, "Who am I?" but "What does this moment ask of me?" Every situation is a new stage. Every identity a costume for virtue's expression. The core remains, the rational, moral actor, but the roles change endlessly. You're not supposed to remain the same. You're supposed to refine, adapt, and evolve, the way fire consumes fuel yet keeps its shape. The self isn't an object, it's a verb. You don't have a self. You do selfhood, moment by moment. And once you grasp that, the weight of your past identity begins to fall away, leading naturally to the Stoic view of history itself. Principle 29. The past as indifferent, no bondage to history. The Stoics regarded the past as indifferent. It exists only as a memory, an electrochemical pattern firing in your brain right now. It has no objective presence, no ongoing authority. Yet most people live as prisoners of what no longer exists, reliving injuries and regrets as if they were happening anew. Epictetus's dictum applies here as mercilessly as ever. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. That includes what has happened to you. The Stoic sees that ruminating on the past is voluntary suffering. You experience every pain twice, once in the moment it occurred, and again each time you replay it. The first is unavoidable, the second is self-inflicted. Each recollection is a fresh wound because you consent to relive it. The Stoic asks the only relevant question: does this serve my virtue now? If not, it's discarded. Epictetus himself embodied this principle under the most brutal conditions imaginable. As a slave, he was beaten and crippled, but when asked how he endured, he said simply, "They controlled my body, not my mind." He refused to let his past define or embitter him. When he was finally freed, he didn't waste energy on revenge or pity. He built a school to teach others freedom. His past wasn't erased, it was rendered powerless. Modern neuroscience now validates this ancient wisdom. Memories aren't recordings, they're reconstructions. Each time you recall an event, your brain rewrites it slightly, influenced by your current mood and perspective. The past is literally unstable, mutable clay reshaped every time you touch it. The Stoics intuited this centuries ago. When you remember, You're not visiting the past. You're creating a present mental event. Why then let ghosts govern the living? Forgiveness, to a Stoic, is not moral heroism, it's practicality. You forgive because you refuse to carry poison. The person who wronged you has likely moved on or died. You're the one reliving their cruelty every time you recall it. Forgiveness means releasing yourself from that repetition. It doesn't mean excusing the act. It means refusing to rehearse it. Seneca put it succinctly. To be angry is to punish yourself for another's mistake. Even nostalgia, the supposedly pleasant side of memory, can become a trap. Longing for better times blinds you to what's still available now. The Stoic uses the past only as data, lessons to inform better judgment today. Everything else, shame, regret, sentimentality, is unnecessary cargo. In truth, the past has no power unless you breathe life into it. Every moment you spend defending, mourning, or glorifying your history is a moment stolen from the present. The Stoic refuses that theft. The past is indifferent. Virtue lives only in your current choices. And once you've freed yourself from the tyranny of what's behind you, the next enemy waits just ahead, the tyranny of what hasn't yet arrived. Principle 30. The future as projection, anxiety's playground. The Stoics regarded the future as another illusion, an elaborate hallucination the mind mistakes for prophecy. Seneca captured it perfectly. We suffer more in imagination than in reality. The future doesn't exist. Every fear about it is a phantom dressed in logic's clothing. All anxiety, when dissected, is anticipation of a fictional event. What if I fail? What if they reject me? What if disaster strikes? The Stoics sees these as mental projections, no more real than a nightmare. The mind is scaring itself with its own images. Fear of the future is the imagination's rebellion against uncertainty. The Stoic distinguishes sharply between preparation and worry. Preparation is rational, using present time to take action toward a possible outcome. Worry is irrational, using present time to suffer over outcomes you can't control. One improves reality, the other manufactures misery. Consider the modern example of a presentation. Preparation means researching, practicing, and organizing your material, actions in your control. Worry means pacing at midnight, imagining humiliation or failure, fantasies outside your control. The Stoic does the first and eliminates the second. You either act now or accept later. There's no value in tormenting yourself in between. Seneca lived this distinction vividly. He survived multiple exiles and shipwrecks. Before each voyage, he practiced Premeditatio Malorum, imagining storms, pirates, even drowning. But once he boarded the ship, he surrendered all anxiety. The preparation was complete. If the storm came, he was ready. If it didn't, he had wasted no peace on false fear. That's the Stoic formula. Prepare rationally, then release emotionally. The mind loves to masquerade as fortune teller, but its predictions are almost always wrong. How many things you feared never happened? How many blessings you never imagined arrived uninvited? The Stoic recognizes this pattern and withdraws belief from imagination's theater. The future, after all, never actually arrives. When it comes, it's renamed the present. And you never suffer in the future itself, only in your thoughts about it, which occur right now. This realization dissolves one of the largest categories of human pain. The anxious mind lives everywhere except the only place it can act, the present. It's haunted by phantoms of futures that will never exist. The Stoic reclaims that wasted energy and redirects it toward what's real. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself constantly, "Do not let the future disturb you. You will meet it, if you must, with the same reason that arms you against the present." Anxiety about tomorrow insults your future self. It assumes you won't have the strength to handle what comes. The Stoic trusts reason. The same faculty guiding him now will guide him then. This doesn't mean passivity. The Stoic prepares wisely, saves money, trains body and mind, but then stops. He doesn't spin in mental rehearsal of every disaster. He practices readiness, not rumination. The truth is stark but freeing. Tomorrow doesn't exist. There is no later, no soon, no eventually. There is only this ongoing moment of choice. Every act of fear about the future steals presence from now, where life actually unfolds. When you stop projecting forward, a strange peace arrives. Not because the future is certain, but because it's irrelevant. Whatever happens will happen in the present, and you'll meet it there. Principle 31. The borrowed goods. Everything is on loan. Epictetus taught that everything external, your possessions, relationships, even your body, is borrowed, not owned. You're not a proprietor in this world. You're a temporary custodian. Everything you touch, your house, your job, your loved ones, belongs to nature, and when nature reclaims them, you're expected to return them gracefully. This isn't detachment from love, it's detachment from ownership. Paradoxically, that's what allows love to be full and free. The Stoics saw clinging as the root of suffering. Ownership is an illusion, stewardship is reality. You don't own your wealth, it can vanish. You don't own your reputation, it depends on others. You don't own your life, it's a rental with no fixed term. Seeing things as borrowed doesn't diminish their value, it intensifies it. It makes every moment an act of gratitude, every possession a temporary gift. Epictetus used the metaphor of a banquet. Life, he said, is like a dinner table set by the gods. When a dish is placed before you, take it politely. When it passes to another, don't snatch or lament. Wait your turn, or accept that your turn might never come again. To demand permanence from the temporary is to fight the law of existence. The hotel room mindset clarifies this. When you stay in a hotel, you enjoy the bed, the view, the breakfast, but you never mistake them for yours. You don't grieve when checkout comes. Apply that same mindset to everything. Your home, your car, your partner, your youth. You're using them temporarily. When the universe demands checkout, resistance is futile and compounds suffering. The Stoic leaves the room tidy, grateful for the stay. Epictetus's simplicity embodied this. When his cup broke, he said, "I knew it was breakable." When his lamp was stolen, he remarked, "Tomorrow I'll buy a cheaper one." You can't steal what I don't cling to. The object didn't lose value. He lost attachment. Freedom isn't having nothing, it's needing nothing. Even love, the most sacred bond, follows this rule. Epictetus warned his students, when you kiss your child, whisper to yourself, "Tomorrow you may die." Not out of morbidity, but to love more fiercely now. The parent who knows their child is on loan holds them fully in the present. The one who clings to permanence suffocates both love and peace. Real love doesn't demand ownership. It honors impermanence by cherishing the fleeting. The same principle applies to your body. You didn't design it. Nature and chance did. You didn't earn its health or beauty. They were assigned. It ages, breaks, and decays according to laws beyond your control. Treating it as borrowed means caring for it responsibly, not abusing it, but also not worshiping it. It's not yours to hoard. It's yours to maintain and then surrender. Seneca said, "Let us prepare our minds as if we'd come to the very end of life." That preparation means recognizing that everything is borrowed. Your wealth, your status, your loved ones, your body, your time. Nothing belongs to you, yet everything is entrusted to you for a while. The Stoic honors the loan by using it well and returning it without complaint. Epictetus put it in practical terms. When you see a beautiful vase, say to yourself, "It's breakable." When you kiss your child, say to yourself, "They are mortal." Not to lessen affection, but to purify it from illusion. You love more deeply when you know you can't keep what you love. Every moment spent resenting loss is energy stolen from gratitude. Every possession treated as permanent is a setup for grief. The Stoic guards his peace by remembering that he owns nothing, not even himself. And when you stop pretending to own what's borrowed, you discover something extraordinary. You already have enough. Principle 32. The sufficiency of little, autarkeia. Autarkeia, self-sufficiency, is the Stoic answer to modern misery. It means needing little to be content. The Stoic doesn't romanticize poverty, but he knows that dependence on excess is a form of slavery. The wise man is rich not because he has much, but because he needs little. Seneca, One of Rome's wealthiest men wrote, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, who is poor." He owned villas, slaves, and fortunes, but none of it defined his peace. He practiced voluntary poverty, living simply for periods to remind himself how little was truly necessary. He'd sleep on the floor, eat coarse bread, drink water, and say, "Is this what I feared?" Each time, the fear shrank and his freedom grew. The Stoic sufficiency test is brutal honesty. What do I actually need? Shelter, food, clothing, companionship, a clear conscience. Everything beyond that is preference, not necessity. The more you confuse the two, the more fragile your happiness becomes. Diogenes the Cynic proved this truth to its extreme. He lived in a barrel, owning nothing, asking Alexander the Great, then ruler of the known world, to stand aside and stop blocking my sunlight. Stoicism doesn't require asceticism, but Diogenes demonstrated the point. Happiness doesn't scale with possessions. Once basic needs are met, everything else is psychological addiction. Marcus Aurelius, an emperor surrounded by gold and power, saw this clearly. "Very little is needed to make a happy life," he wrote. "It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking." If the man who ruled the world could find sufficiency in simplicity, so can anyone. Happiness isn't found in abundance. It's found in perspective. Modern life fails this test completely. You get the raise, the car, the house, and within months, the pleasure fades. That's hedonic adaptation, the treadmill that makes you chase endlessly without satisfaction. The Stoic steps off by redefining wealth, needing less. If you're content with water and bread, every luxury becomes a bonus, not a dependency. Voluntary discomfort is Stoic training for resilience. Sleep without a pillow. Skip a meal. Walk instead of drive. When comfort returns, you appreciate it. When it disappears, you're unshaken. The practice isn't deprivation, it's insurance. Seneca said, "Set aside a few days each month to be content with the scantiest fare and roughest clothing, saying to yourself, 'Is this what I feared?'" The answer is always yes, and it's always freeing. The sufficiency of little also sharpens gratitude. When you learn to enjoy the simplest pleasures, a cup of water, a breath of air, a friend's presence, everything else becomes surplus joy. You stop seeking happiness through accumulation and begin finding it in awareness. To the Stoic, wealth measured in possessions is unstable. Wealth measured in sufficiency is unshakable. You can lose your fortune and remain wealthy if your desires are few. Freedom, therefore, doesn't come from ownership. It comes from independence from need. And that independence naturally leads to the Stoics' next medicine, gratitude. Principle 33, gratitude as philosophy, seeing what is given. To the Stoic, gratitude isn't sentiment, it's perception. It's the clear recognition of how much has already been given, freely, constantly, undeservedly. Marcus Aurelius began each day reminding himself, "When you arise in the morning, think of what a privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love." Gratitude isn't an emotion you chase. It's the natural result of seeing reality without entitlement. The first and greatest gift is existence itself. You didn't earn birth. Trillions of potential humans never existed. You did. The entire chain of cosmic and biological history conspired for your consciousness to appear here, now. The odds are so infinitesimal that mere existence is staggering good fortune. To complain about anything within it is like cursing the sunrise because it isn't your favorite color. Epictetus trained gratitude through negative visualization. Imagine losing what you take for granted, your eyesight, your health, your loved ones, your breath. Then open your eyes and realize they're still here. Gratitude rushes in, not as a forced exercise, but as an immediate, physical relief. You stop measuring what's missing and start noticing what's present. He told his students to be grateful for water as a thirsty traveler, for bread as a starving peasant, for shelter as one caught in the rain. Abundance dulls appreciation. The Stoic reverses that numbness through deliberate attention. Every sip, every moment, Every act of kindness becomes sacred again when you strip away expectation. Even hardship, for the Stoic, deserves thanks. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." The injury teaches patience. The betrayal exposes truth. The loss dissolves illusion. Gratitude here isn't denial, it's understanding. Every difficulty refines virtue. Every pain sculpts resilience. To thank fate for challenges isn't masochism, it's wisdom. Seneca advised, "He who receives a benefit with gratitude repays the first installment." Gratitude isn't passive acknowledgement, it's active alignment with reality. It transforms envy into contentment, complaint into composure. The ungrateful mind is blind, it sees only lack. The grateful mind sees abundance everywhere. Gratitude also annihilates arrogance. When you recognize that everything, from your heartbeat to your education to your morning coffee, depends on countless unseen hands, humility arises naturally. You stop saying, "I deserve," and start saying, "I'm fortunate." The Stoics didn't thank gods for luxury. They thanked existence for opportunity, the chance to think clearly, act rightly, endure gracefully. Gratitude wasn't a mood, it was a worldview. To live gratefully is to live lucidly, to see without distortion what's been given and what's truly owed. And what's owed, the Stoic concludes, is simple: to use what's given well, without complaint, and to return it gladly when called. Principle 34. Amor fati, the love of fate. To the Stoic, acceptance isn't the finish line, it's the starting point. True mastery of the mind arrives when you don't just accept what happens, but love what happens. Amor fati, the love of fate, isn't resignation, it's transformation. Marcus Aurelius captured it perfectly. A blazing fire makes flame and brightness out of everything that is thrown into it. The ordinary mind resists what comes. The Stoic mind burns it into fuel. There are 3 levels of relating to reality. The first is resistance, suffering against what is. Most people live here, locked in endless combat with the uncontrollable, saying, "Why me?" and "This shouldn't have happened." The second level is acceptance, recognizing reality as unchangeable, saying, "It is what it is." Better, but still passive. The third and final level is love, seeing every event as necessary and even desirable. The Stoic looks at hardship and says, "Yes, this too belongs." The logic is inescapable. Since the past cannot be changed, and the present is already here, everything that has happened was necessary. It's the only configuration of causes that could have produced this exact moment. To resent it is to resent reality itself. You might as well rage against gravity. Amor fati is the only rational position left once illusion dissolves. The Stoic doesn't ask, "Why did this happen?" but "What is it for?" Every event, no matter how cruel, becomes raw material for virtue. Fate is the sculptor, but you are the stone that must consent to be shaped. Nietzsche, echoing Stoic wisdom, offered the test of eternal return. Imagine living your exact life. Every pain, every joy, every humiliation, an infinite number of times. Would you curse the thought, or would you welcome it? The Stoic answers without hesitation, yes, again and again. Because everything in that life, even the heartbreaks, contributed to their wisdom and strength. The point isn't masochism, it's integration. You stop dividing experience into good and bad. Everything becomes necessary, therefore good. Life throws disasters like a sculptor's hammer. You can complain that it's breaking you, or realize it's shaping you. Epictetus said, "Do not seek for events to happen as you wish, but wish them to happen as they do." That's not fatalism, it's alignment with the universe. When you will what happens, you cease conflict with reality itself. You're the artist, and fate supplies the materials. You wanted marble, but fate gave you mud. The amateur whines, the master creates art anyway. What defines greatness isn't the quality of material, but the quality of response. Fate gives you pain. Can you turn it into patience? Fate gives you loss. Can you turn it into wisdom? Amor fati is the alchemy that turns every experience into excellence. Marcus Aurelius practiced this daily. Plague in the empire? Opportunity for endurance. Betrayal in his court? Opportunity for forgiveness. Fatigue and illness? Opportunity for humility. He turned each misfortune into moral training. That's what it means to love fate. It's radical collaboration with reality. When you love fate, you're unbreakable because you've removed the category of unwanted. Whatever happens, you already chose it in advance by choosing to live in accordance with nature. The Stoic doesn't hope for an easier life. He hopes for the strength to love the life he has. Principle 35. Sympatheia, the web of mutual causation. The Stoics didn't see the universe as a collection of isolated objects, but as a living organism, a web of mutual causation where every event ripples through the whole. Marcus Aurelius called it sympatheia. All things are woven together, and the common bond is sacred. This wasn't mystical poetry, it was early systems thinking. Every action affects every other, seen or unseen. Your choice of words, your tone, your habits, all send invisible waves through the cosmos. A small kindness today might echo in a stranger's life years from now. A single act of cruelty might ripple harm you'll never witness. You're not a disconnected spectator, you're a node in the network. The Stoics understood there are no private vices. When you corrupt your own character, you harm the entire structure that depends on you. What's bad for the hive is bad for the bee. Marcus repeated this to himself as emperor because he knew his moods weren't private. If he ruled with anger, administrators became harsh, soldiers became cruel, provinces bled. His self-mastery wasn't self-improvement, it was public service. This insight destroys selfishness. Your well-being and others are mathematically intertwined. To act viciously is to act against yourself. To act virtuously is to nourish the whole. The Stoic sees the cosmos not as a stage, but as a single body, and harming any part is disease. Sympatheia also cultivates humility. You can't take full credit for your successes. Your education, your genes, your opportunities, none were entirely yours. You're an expression of forces beyond comprehension. Gratitude replaces arrogance when you see how dependent you are on the web. Modern science confirms what the Stoics intuited. Ecology, climate systems, economies, all operate through interconnection. A factory in one country alters rainfall in another. A careless post online triggers real emotional consequences continents away. Stoic cosmology wasn't primitive, it was prophetic. Understanding sympatheia means your duty expands beyond your skin. Every word, every choice, every emotion participates in shaping the whole. The Stoic lives with this awareness, not paralyzed by guilt, but empowered by responsibility. When you act, ask, does this nourish or poison the web? If the answer is poison, stop. If it's nourishment, continue, even if unseen. Marcus reminded himself that he was a limb of a greater organism. To live selfishly is to amputate yourself from the whole. To live in harmony is to feel the pulse of the universe within your own heartbeat. This isn't sentiment, it's sanity. You're not separate. You never were. Principle 36. You are made for cooperation, ant colony consciousness. Marcus Aurelius repeated it like a mantra. Human beings are made for one another. The Stoics saw cooperation not as moral obligation, but as biological truth. Just as ants are made for colonies and bees for hives, humans are designed for cooperation. To fight, that is to fight your nature. Modern science vindicates this. Humans didn't survive through strength or speed, but through cooperation, language, shared labor, mutual defense. The human brain is wired for empathy, fairness, and communication because those who lack them died out. Isolation isn't freedom, it's deprivation. You're starving yourself of the very element your species evolved to need, connection. Marcus used the body metaphor. The hands were made to work together, the feet to support each other, the eyes to see together. Even the upper and lower teeth meet to chew. When one organ attacks another, that's illness. When one person harms another, it's the same pathology at scale. The Stoic recognizes hostility as malfunction. Cooperation isn't kindness, it's health. To harm others is to injure yourself. To isolate is to weaken. To contribute is to thrive. When the hive prospers, the bee prospers. That's not moral poetry, it's structural truth. Marcus didn't enjoy endless bureaucratic work, petitions, trials, administration, but he understood it as his role in the cosmic body. Fulfillment didn't come from pleasure, but from contribution. He didn't ask, do I like this? But does this serve the whole? That's the Stoic discipline of social purpose. Service, to the Stoic, is enlightened self-interest. When your neighbor's house burns, your street loses safety and value. When your friend succeeds, the network that sustains you strengthens. Helping others isn't moral performance, it's systemic maintenance. This perspective eliminates envy. Another's success doesn't diminish you. It uplifts the structure you share. Another's suffering isn't entertainment, it's infection spreading. Even your emotional life depends on cooperation. Anger, pride, jealousy, all arise from illusion of separateness. The moment you remember you're part of one organism, hostility collapses into compassion. This doesn't mean letting others exploit you. The Stoic helps wisely, supporting without enabling, contributing without self-erasure. Cooperation means aligning with nature, not becoming its victim. Epictetus framed it simply. You are a citizen of the universe. Your role isn't self-centered consumption, it's cosmic participation. The baker, the soldier, the philosopher, all serve the same city, though their tools differ. The Stoic doesn't crave recognition, only alignment with their function. Modern loneliness is the symptom of forgetting this truth. You scroll endlessly, chasing validation, but feel empty because digital attention isn't cooperation, it's simulation. Real cooperation demands contribution. Speak truthfully, help practically, listen deeply. That's what your nervous system evolved for. Marcus saw this clearly. Each morning he reminded himself, today I will meet the ungrateful, the deceitful, the arrogant. But I share intelligence and divinity with them. He refused to see enemies, only misguided teammates. That's not naive optimism, it's functional realism. You can't hate parts of the body and expect health. When you act with others in mind, you align with the nature that made you. When you withdraw into bitterness or pride, you become a splinter in the flesh of the world. Cooperation isn't weakness, it's the highest form of strength. Because when you remember that you're part of something vast and living, you stop fighting reality and start fortifying it. And that, for the Stoic, is what it means to live according to nature. Principle 37. Speak only what's necessary, Stoic rhetoric. Epictetus said it with surgical precision. Be silent, or speak something better than silence. That's the Stoic standard. Every word is an ethical act. Every sentence a reflection of judgment. Most people vomit words to fill silence because silence exposes the emptiness of their thinking. The Stoic, on the other hand, wields speech like a scalpel, used rarely, precisely, and only when it heals or clarifies. Before words leave the mouth, they pass through 3 filters. Is it true? Is it necessary? Is it kind? If a statement fails any of these, it dies in the throat. The first filter kills gossip and lies, because gossip is speculation about others' lives, and lies are cowardice dressed as convenience. The second filter, necessity, slaughters small talk, complaint, and vanity. The third, kindness, removes cruelty masquerading as honesty. What remains after this filtration isn't robotic silence, but purified speech, words that actually mean something. Zeno, the founder of Stoicism, joked that nature gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth, so we'd listen twice as much as we speak. Listening is how wisdom enters. Talking is how ignorance escapes. The ratio matters. Every unnecessary sentence dilutes your credibility. Every moment of silence deepens your power. Marcus Aurelius, despite commanding an empire, practiced rhetorical minimalism. In meetings, he didn't pontificate, he asked questions. He didn't fill space to appear decisive. He allowed silence to reveal truth. He understood that talking feels like thinking, but often replaces it. When you speak constantly, you mistake verbal noise for understanding. When you pause, the mind has time to see. The Stoic views gossip as acid. Speaking ill of the absent corrodes your character and poisons your relationships. You train your mind to find fault and exaggerate others' flaws, then wonder why peace evades you. Gossip is a socially acceptable form of cowardice. It builds bonds through mutual resentment instead of mutual respect. The Stoic refuses that trade. If correction is needed, it's done privately, directly, with compassion. Otherwise, silence. Seneca warned that idle talk corrupts focus. The more you discuss what doesn't concern you, the less you master what does. Every trivial conversation is an unpaid tax on your attention. The Stoic doesn't waste his words because he doesn't waste his mind. Silence is not emptiness, it's a forge. In silence, ideas sharpen, judgments cool, the ego shrinks. When you finally speak, your words carry weight because they weren't spilled carelessly, they were earned. Epictetus taught that speech should aim to teach, help, or heal. Everything else, complaint, boast, insult, is noise pollution. The Stoic trains himself to make his voice rare, measured, and deliberate. Not robotic, precise. So, before you speak, pause. Ask, does this improve on silence? If not, the world doesn't need to hear it, and you'll gain more power by holding it. Principle 38. The invisibility practice. Acting without audience. Do the right thing, and don't post about it. That's the Stoic's invisibility practice. Virtue loses its purity the moment it depends on recognition. You're free only when your goodness no longer needs applause. Epictetus said, "Let whatever appears good to you be good for you alone." In other words, stop performing. Do the right thing because it's right, not because you want the world to know. The Stoic tests himself through anonymous action. Give money without your name attached. Help someone who'll never know it was you. Work diligently on projects that won't bring credit. The ego will scream in protest, but no one will notice. Exactly, that's the medicine. The discomfort reveals addiction. You're hooked on approval, and invisibility is withdrawal therapy. Marcus Aurelius wrote philosophy only for himself. The most powerful man on earth, capable of commissioning statues in his honor, instead wrote private reminders never meant for public eyes. Meditations isn't a performance, it's an act of self-surgery. His audience was his conscience and the cosmos. That's why his words still pierce today. They were never filtered for reputation. Epictetus offered a practical test. At a dinner party, if someone serves you less wine or excludes you from conversation, don't sulk, don't assert yourself. Accept it calmly. That's strength. You're training yourself to remain undisturbed by visibility or invisibility, inclusion or exclusion. If you can stay inwardly unshaken while being ignored, you've tasted freedom. Virtue pursued for reward isn't virtue, it's commerce. The man who's honest to earn praise will lie when the crowd changes. The woman who's kind to seem compassionate will turn cruel when kindness no longer pays. True virtue is self-sustaining. It needs no witnesses, no trophies, no likes. Seneca warned, "What you do when no one's watching defines who you are." The Stoic acts as if the entire cosmos observes him, not with paranoia, but reverence. His audience is universal reason, not human approval. Modern culture rewards visibility, but visibility is poison for the soul. The moment your motivation becomes external, you've handed over control of your peace. Dependence on recognition is dependence on strangers' whims. The Stoic cuts that cord. Practice invisibility. Do your work without broadcasting it. Let results whisper instead of announcing themselves. Build a life that doesn't need to be seen to be meaningful. Invisibility isn't obscurity, it's integrity. Principle 39. The tempered hedonism, preferred indifference. The Stoics weren't monks, they were realists. They didn't deny pleasure or luxury. They simply refused enslavement to it. Health, wealth, comfort, reputation, all these they called preferred indifference. Prefer them when available, endure their absence when not, but never confuse them with happiness. The Cynics, predecessors of the Stoics, renounced all externals. They lived in barrels, slept under the stars, owned nothing. The Stoics refined this. They said externals have relative value. Health is naturally preferable to sickness, but no moral value. They don't make you good or bad. You can pursue them rationally, but your virtue must never depend on them. Seneca, one of Rome's wealthiest men, wrote beautifully about simplicity. His critics mocked him. "You speak of poverty while bathing in marble." His answer was surgical. "I prefer wealth to poverty, but I'm not better because of it. And I would be equally calm if I lost it." That's the point. Possession is not the sin, dependence is. The Stoic enjoys pleasure without identifying with it. When a fine meal arrives, he eats gratefully, knowing hunger could return. When fortune smiles, he smiles back, without forgetting that fortune changes faces hourly. Pleasure is welcomed, not worshipped. At a dinner party, Marcus Aurelius would enjoy conversation and wine, but if both vanished, his tranquility wouldn't. That's the test. If something's removal breaks your peace, you're not enjoying it. You're enslaved to it. The Stoic measures freedom not by what he owns, but by what he can lose without losing himself. Voluntary discomfort trains this independence. Seneca would sleep on the floor, eat coarse bread, and wear simple clothes, not from guilt, but calibration. He wanted to remind his nervous system that comfort is pleasant, not essential. This practice rewires the mind's relationship with pleasure. When you learn to endure the absence of comfort, its presence becomes bonus, not necessity. Epictetus put it sharply. When you kiss your child, whisper, "He may die tomorrow." He didn't mean to suppress love, he meant to remove dependency. You love more fiercely when you remember it's borrowed. You enjoy more deeply when you stop clinging. Modern life reverses this logic. People chase comfort until comfort becomes confinement. The softer your surroundings, the weaker your spirit. The Stoic walks a middle path, neither ascetic nor indulgent, but disciplined in both directions. To the Stoic, pleasure is like fire. Controlled, it warms and nourishes. Uncontrolled, it consumes. He doesn't extinguish the flame. He learns to hold it without burning. Here's the ultimate test. If your health failed, wealth vanished, reputation collapsed, would your character still stand? If yes, you're free. If no, you're owned by externals. The goal isn't to reject the world's pleasures. It's to use them wisely, gratefully, and lightly. When pleasure comes, enjoy it. When pain comes, endure it. When both leave, remain unchanged. That's the Stoic's tempered hedonism. Pleasure without prison, desire without delusion, joy without dependence. Principle 40. The indifference to death, life's bookend. The Stoic doesn't fear death. He studies it, accepts it, even befriends it. To him, death is not an interruption to life. It's part of life's architecture. Seneca wrote, "You ask when you will die? The better question is whether you have lived." Death isn't a tragedy, it's punctuation. It ends the sentence, but it's what gives the sentence structure meaning. Imagine a song that never ended. No final note, no silence. It would turn from music into noise. A painting with no border would bleed endlessly off the canvas. A life without death would dissolve into monotony, stripped of urgency or purpose. Death doesn't ruin life, it frames it. It's the contrast that makes each moment matter. Socrates faced execution with more calm than his executioners. While others trembled, he spoke of philosophy, of the immortality of the soul, of ignorance as the root of fear. When asked if he feared death, he said, "No one knows what death is. Perhaps it is the greatest blessing." That wasn't arrogance, it was wisdom. He understood that death is unknown, and what is unknown cannot rationally be feared. Marcus Aurelius, standing among dying soldiers, understood this on a visceral level. "In a little while," he wrote, "you'll be nobody and nowhere, like all those you admire now." To him, this wasn't despair, it was freedom. If death erases fame, fortune, and memory alike, then none of those are worth chasing. What's left? Virtue. The moment you stop fearing death, you stop wasting your life. Seneca described death as life's completion, not its interruption. "The day you fear as your last," he said, "is the birthday of eternity." Whether eternity means continued existence or simple non-being, the fear dissolves the same way, because neither scenario threatens you. Even the Epicureans, often rivals of Stoics, landed on a similar truth. Epictetus said, "Death is nothing to us. When we exist, death is not, and when death is, we are not." You will never experience being dead, because to experience requires life. What you fear doesn't exist for you. The Stoics saw death the same way, not as something to fight, but something to understand and integrate. You were non-existent for eternity before birth, and that non-existence didn't bother you. Why should the next one? The Stoic practices this mentally. Every night before sleep, he rehearses death. What if I do not wake? Then he wakes, grateful. He doesn't brood on dying. He uses it to sharpen living. Death's proximity gives clarity. When you know the clock is running, you stop wasting time on trivia. To the Stoic, fearing death is rebelling against nature. Nature brought you into the world when it needed you and will take you when it's done. You don't rage at autumn leaves for falling. You understand it's their purpose. You are one of those leaves. Death is not an enemy. It's your most honest advisor. Principle 41. The sage as ideal, asymptotic approach to wisdom. The Stoics built their ethics around an impossible target, the sage. A perfect being of reason, immune to destructive passions, incapable of moral error. None of them claimed to have met one. Maybe Socrates came close, maybe Cato, maybe no one. But the point wasn't to find the sage, it was to aim toward him. Think of the sage as a North Star. You'll never reach it, but it gives direction. Without it, you drift. With it, every movement can be measured. The Stoic wakes each day and asks, what would the sage do here? Not because he expects perfection, but because he expects improvement. Cato the Younger embodied this asymptotic striving. He defied Julius Caesar's tyranny, knowing it would cost his life. When defeat came, he chose death over submission. To Caesar, it was a political act. To Stoics, it was moral victory. He died consistent with his principles, which is the Stoic definition of success. His life wasn't flawless, but it was coherent. The sage, in Stoic philosophy, is not a mythical god. He's what happens when judgment is perfect, when every impression is examined, every action aligned with virtue. He doesn't rage, envy, or despair, not because he's emotionless, but because he's rational. The sage feels joy, caution, goodwill, but never panic or bitterness. Even Chrysippus, one of the greatest Stoic logicians, admitted that such a man may never exist. But the pursuit itself transforms you. The closer you get, the calmer you become. Progress, not perfection, is the prize. Mathematically, this is asymptotic. You approach but never touch. The distance narrows infinitely, yet never vanishes. The Stoic's peace grows in proportion to this narrowing. You may never be a sage, but every act of discipline, every controlled reaction, every moment of integrity, these are steps closer to him. Beware those who claim they've arrived. The self-proclaimed wise are precisely those furthest from wisdom. True sages, if any exist, wouldn't boast. They'd smile and stay silent. For the Stoic, the ideal is not delusion, it's calibration. It reminds you that the goal is direction, not destination. Like a ship guided by the polar star, you never arrive at the star, but you reach your port because of it. Principle 42. The simultaneity of time, past, present, future as one. Marcus Aurelius saw time as a single, flowing organism, past, present, and future not as separate entities, but as one continuous movement. He called time a river of passing events. It never stops, it never repeats, it never divides. Everything that was and will be exists only as perception now. Augustine, centuries later, formalized the same intuition. There's no past or future, only the present remembering, the present experiencing, and the present anticipating. You live entirely in now, just changing its content. The Stoics already practiced this realization. Marcus reminded himself, the present moment is all that one ever loses, for this alone we possess. Past is memory, an image playing in the present mind. Future is imagination, projection built from present thoughts. The present itself is the only reality. To live wisely, you must live there. Regret, then, is illusion. You're not suffering from the past. You're suffering from a current thought about it. Anxiety, too, is illusion. You're not suffering from the future, but from mental images generated now. In both cases, you're torturing yourself with shadows of your own making. When Marcus meditated on time, he saw that even the most powerful empires dissolve into seconds. All is ephemeral, he wrote, both the memory of those who lived and the things they did. He didn't mean life was meaningless. He meant meaning can only exist now. The only time you can be virtuous, courageous, or grateful is this instant. Everything else is fantasy. The Stoic uses this understanding as practical medicine. When anxiety rises, he pauses. What time is it? The answer is always now. When guilt claws at him, he asks, what time is it? Still now. He returns to the only arena where choice exists, the present. This isn't metaphysics, it's technique. Marcus wrote, confine yourself to the present. He wasn't preaching mysticism. He was prescribing focus. The moment you collapse time into now, suffering collapses with it. The Stoic sees the simultaneity of time as liberation. You don't need to fix the past, it no longer exists. You don't need to fear the future, it doesn't exist yet. You only need to act rightly in the present, and that act becomes your entire life. Everything that ever mattered, every joy, every tragedy, every act of courage or cowardice, happened in the same dimension, the eternal present. You're not in time. Time is in you. When you grasp that, anxiety loses its anchor. Regret loses its teeth. You stop being pulled between ghosts of memory and phantoms of anticipation. You finally stand still, in the one place reality ever happens. Principle 43, the logos of change, transformation as the universe's language. Heraclitus said, everything flows. The Stoics took that statement and built their entire cosmology upon it. They saw the universe as a living organism, animated by the logos, the rational principle that orders and sustains everything. Change, therefore, isn't chaos, it's communication. It's how the logos speaks. Fire turns to air, air to water, water to earth, and back again. The universe breathes and cycles, never static, never still. To resist change is to refuse to listen to the universe itself. The Stoics viewed the cosmos as a single, ever-transforming fire, creative, rational, and self-renewing. You're part of that fire. Your cells change every 7 years. Your opinions evolve. Your desires shift. You are not a fixed identity. You're an unfolding process. When you resist transformation, you're rebelling against the very nature of existence. Marcus Aurelius saw this clearly. Everything is only for a day, he wrote. Both that which remembers and that which is remembered. Empires, reputations, even civilizations, all dissolve and reform in the current of time. He meditated on his own body's decomposition, not as a morbid exercise, but as observation of physical law. Atoms rearrange. Flesh becomes soil, soil becomes grass, grass feeds the next creature. Death isn't disappearance, it's redistribution. You return to the system that birthed you. This wasn't abstract for Marcus. It was battlefield truth. Surrounded by corpses, disease, and decay, he understood change not as tragedy, but as continuity. The universe never wastes, it only reconfigures. Personal transformation follows the same pattern. Every change, loss, heartbreak, failure, is raw material for new formation. To the Stoic, change isn't just inevitable, it's instructive. When you lose your job, the universe is showing you impermanence and adaptability. When you age, it's teaching detachment from vanity. When relationships shift, it's reminding you that connection is a privilege, not a possession. Change is not an interruption of your life, it is your life. The sage reads it as the universe's ongoing sentence, written in motion and matter. To resist, it is to reject the grammar of existence. To embrace, it is to align yourself with logos, to live fluently in the language of reality. The Stoic doesn't ask for stability. He asks for strength to ride the current. He doesn't pray for permanence. He prays for perception, to see transformation as instruction, not punishment. Change is the cosmos whispering, grow. Principle 44. The surrender of outcomes, effort without attachment. The Stoic pours everything into his actions, but releases the result the moment his work is done. It's not passivity, it's precision. You control your effort. You don't control outcomes. The moment you forget this, you trade serenity for anxiety. The archer metaphor captures it perfectly. You can perfect your stance, your breathing, your aim, and your release. But once the arrow leaves your hand, it's out of your control. The wind may shift. The target may move. Excellence lies not in hitting the target, but in flawless execution. The archer's true aim is not the bullseye, it's mastery of himself. This principle applies universally. The Stoic entrepreneur builds the best product he can, treats customers fairly, leads ethically, and then lets the market decide. If he succeeds, good. If he fails, still good, because his virtue, his conduct, remains intact. The result is external, his effort is internal. Epictetus warned against outcome dependence. When you want something, remember you only desire the use of your own reason. That's your domain. When you attach self-worth to success, you've built identity on sand. When fortune shifts, as it always does, you'll collapse. This isn't learned helplessness, it's learned focus. The Stoic doesn't shrug and say, "Nothing matters." He says, "Only the controllable matters infinitely. The uncontrollable, not at all." Because effort is meaning. You do your duty not because it guarantees success, but because it defines your character. The Bhagavad Gita, centuries apart but philosophically aligned, said the same. You have the right to action alone, never to its fruits. The Stoics and the Vedics agreed. Your peace depends on effort without craving. Attachment is slavery disguised as ambition. When you crave specific outcomes, success breeds fear, you'll lose it, and failure breeds despair, you didn't get it. Detachment is freedom disguised as indifference. You still give your best, but without emotional dependence on the result. Ironically, this mindset improves performance. Detachment removes the pressure that destroys excellence. You act purely, clearly, presently. You become dangerous, not because you don't care, but because you're untouchable. When the Stoic fails, he smiles. I did my part. When he succeeds, he smiles the same way. I did my part. Both results dissolve into the same peace. Principle 45. Redefining success, virtue as the only victory. Society worships outcomes, wealth, status, influence, applause. The Stoic sees those as empty trophies. They belong to fortune, not to you. Virtue, wisdom, courage, justice, temperance is the only success that can't be taken away. Everything else can be stripped, lost, or corrupted. This redefinition inverts the world's metrics. The world counts net worth. The Stoic counts moments of integrity. The world praises followers. The Stoic values self-control. The world worships titles. The Stoic honors character. These are not compatible systems. You must choose your scoreboard. Cato the Younger's life illustrates this inversion brutally. He lost every major political battle. He was mocked, isolated, and eventually driven to suicide. By worldly standards, he was a failure. But to the Stoics, he was the Republic's last free man. He refused bribes, power, and flattery. He lived and died aligned with principle. That's not failure, that's perfection. The Stoic parent reframes success entirely. Conventional success says, "My child got into Harvard." Stoic success says, "I was patient when frustrated, kind when tired, honest when tempted to lie." Whether the child excels or fails, your virtue as a parent is your victory. The Stoic doesn't measure love by outcome, but by consistency of action. Seneca warned, "He who values wealth loses freedom. He who values virtue is free everywhere." When you anchor identity in externals, you become a hostage. You depend on things that can vanish in a day. When you anchor in virtue, nothing external can threaten your peace. Redefining success is death to ego but birth to freedom. It means you stop competing in the world's rigged game and play one you can always win, the internal one. Every day you act justly when injustice is easier, courageously when fear whispers retreat, wisely when ignorance tempts you, temperately when appetite screams. Each act is a point scored in a game only you can play. At life's end, no one escapes the same audit. The Stoic knows what that moment will reveal. On your deathbed, your resume won't matter. Your car, house, or fame won't even flicker. What will remain is the pattern of your choices, the tone of your soul. Did you act well? Did you live with virtue? That's the only ledger that counts. The Stoic lives now as if already under that final judgment. He doesn't wait to discover meaning at death. He defines meaning through daily conduct. Success, to him, isn't accumulation, it's alignment. To live according to nature is to live in harmony with logos, the rational structure of the universe. And logos doesn't care about your trophies. It cares about integrity, coherence, proportion, balance. When you act with those, you're successful even if you're destitute. When you act without them, you're failing even if you rule an empire. Marcus wrote, "A man's worth is measured by the worth of what he values." If you value applause, you become small, because applause is cheap. If you value virtue, you become vast, because virtue aligns with the entire cosmos. Principle 46. Living according to nature, kata-physn. Live according to nature. It was the Stoic commandment, the foundation beneath all others, and the one most misunderstood. It doesn't mean retreating to the forest or rejecting modern life. The Stoics weren't anti-civilization hermits. They were senators, emperors, teachers, and traders. According to nature didn't mean primitive, it meant aligned. Nature, to the Stoic, wasn't wilderness. It was logos, the rational structure of the universe. To live kata-physn meant aligning your life with that structure, accepting universal order, embodying human reason, and fulfilling your unique role in the cosmic web. There are 3 levels of nature in Stoic thought. First, universal nature, the grand design of the cosmos, the laws that govern stars, atoms, and seasons. Second, human nature, which is rationality and sociability, the twin capacities that make us distinct from animals. Third, individual nature, your particular temperament, talents, and position in life. Living according to nature means harmonizing all 3. Accept the universe's order. Think and act rationally. Fulfill your personal role with integrity. A bird lives kata-physn when it flies. It's using what nature designed it for. When a bird refuses to fly, it violates its essence. Likewise, a human lives kata-physn when reasoning clearly and cooperating with others. When you abandon reason for impulse or compassion for selfishness, you act against your design. You become like a winged creature crawling in the dirt. Marcus Aurelius saw himself biologically. He didn't romanticize the idea of purpose. He observed it as anatomy. Just as eyes are made to see and hands to grasp, humans are made to reason and to live with others. When you act against this, he wrote, you act against yourself. A malfunctioning organ doesn't need punishment, it needs restoration. The same goes for a malfunctioning mind. This phrase, according to nature, has been corrupted by modern misuse. Some interpret it as, what's natural is good. But the Stoics didn't confuse biology with morality. Disease is natural. Violence is natural. What's truly natural is rational order, because the cosmos itself operates on reason. Civilization, technology, language, all expressions of rational cooperation are deeply natural. What's unnatural is vice, greed, deceit, cowardice, indulgence, behaviors that contradict the rational and social essence of humanity. Seneca lived surrounded by wealth, but never worshipped it. He said luxury itself isn't unnatural, dependence on it is. To live kata-physn isn't to reject modern life, it's to participate in it virtuously. To build, create, and cooperate while staying anchored in wisdom. Living according to nature, then, isn't withdrawal. It's participation without corruption. It's doing your work excellently, thinking clearly, and treating others justly, all while accepting the larger flow of the universe. You live kata-physn not when you flee life's complexity, but when you meet it rationally and fulfill your role within it. Principle 47. The web of roles, personae, and duties. Epictetus said life is like a play. You didn't write the script, but you're responsible for your performance. You might be cast as a beggar, a soldier, a ruler, a student. The role isn't yours to choose. How you play it is. If it's your fate to play a cripple, he said, play it well. Don't limp badly. The Stoic examines his personae, the roles he occupies simultaneously: human, citizen, parent, child, friend, worker. Each carries duties. Conflict arises not because roles exist, but because we confuse or over-identify with them. Marcus Aurelius balanced being emperor, father, husband, philosopher. He didn't always succeed, but he understood the principle. Perform your roles excellently without letting them consume your identity. I am not emperor, he wrote. I am a man to whom the office of emperor has been assigned. The role ends, the person remains. Roles exist in hierarchy. Universal roles, being human, rational, kind, supersede all others. Then come family roles, parent, child, partner, usually stronger than professional ones. But the hierarchy isn't rigid. Wisdom decides case by case. A Stoic uses reason to prioritize, not emotion to react. Consider the actor analogy again. The stage shifts, new roles emerge. Today you're a student, tomorrow a teacher. Today you're healthy, tomorrow you're ill. You can't cling to any mask too tightly. Those who say, I am a CEO or I am a soldier, mistake the costume for the self. When fate changes the script, retirement, demotion, disability, they collapse because they built identity on a temporary assignment. The Stoic holds every role lightly. I am a rational being, he reminds himself, currently expressing that rationality as father or citizen or worker. When one role ends, another begins. The actor doesn't mourn when the curtain closes. He prepares for the next play. Even Marcus, at the height of power, longed for simplicity. He envied the philosopher who could live quietly, yet accepted that nature cast him as emperor. To reject his role would be to reject nature's order. So he performed it with discipline and dignity, even when it exhausted him. The Stoic understands that peace comes not from escaping roles, but from performing them consciously. The trick isn't fewer responsibilities, it's wiser engagement. Each role is a moral exercise, a chance to practice justice, patience, or courage. You fulfill your role well not by perfection, but by presence. By showing up with integrity, detached from applause, focused only on excellence of performance. That's Stoic professionalism in life's theater. Principle 48. Epistemic humility, the limits of knowledge. Socrates said his wisdom came from knowing that he knew nothing. The Stoics inherited this humility. They saw arrogance of certainty as the surest mark of ignorance. To live according to reason is to recognize how small your reason is compared to the universe's. Marcus's view from above meditation was epistemic humility in action. He pictured himself as a speck on a rock orbiting a star, one star among billions. What could such a creature know about reality? Your soul is a brief visitor, he wrote. Your sense is limited, your mind a flicker. That perspective isn't nihilism, it's calibration. It aligns confidence with scale. The Stoics understood that perception is narrow, information incomplete, and interpretation flawed. You don't see the world, you see your version of it. Every judgment is filtered through upbringing, biology, emotion, and ignorance. That should make you cautious. When you judge someone harshly, you're acting on incomplete data. You see their behavior, not their story. You see the result, not the cause. Epictetus warned. You cannot know what another man has seen or suffered. Modern neuroscience confirms it. Every brain constructs a private simulation of the world. The Stoic sees this and hesitates before forming conclusions. Aurelius, a skeptic philosopher, influenced the Stoics with his concept of suspension of judgment. The wise person, he said, holds beliefs tentatively. This appears true based on current evidence. Not, this is true forever. The former invites correction, the latter breeds dogmatism. Epistemic humility doesn't mean relativism. The Stoic doesn't say, nothing is true. He says, Truth exists, but I grasp it imperfectly. That awareness keeps the mind flexible. The fool defends beliefs as identity. The wise person adjusts them as evidence shifts. Seneca compared the mind to a hand reaching into fog. You can grasp something, but not claim you hold the whole landscape. That's why Stoic wisdom is quiet. It doesn't need to shout certainty. Modern science mirrors this posture. The best scientists never say, "We've proven it absolutely." They say, "Current evidence suggests." They leave space for tomorrow's discovery. The Stoic applies that to daily life. In arguments, he asks, "Could I be wrong?" In anger, "Do I know enough to condemn?" In despair, "Am I certain this situation is hopeless?" 9 times out of 10, the answer is no. Epistemic humility breeds compassion. If your knowledge is limited, so is everyone else's. People act from their level of understanding, not out of pure malice. This softens judgment, increases patience, and deepens humanity. Marcus reminded himself constantly, "I do not know what others carry within them." That awareness saved him from the arrogance of certainty. The Stoic seeks clarity, not omniscience. His wisdom grows not by collecting facts, but by subtracting false confidence. To live kata physn, to live according to nature, requires this humility. Because nature itself, in its infinite complexity, is always beyond your total comprehension. To admit that is not weakness. It's alignment. The universe doesn't demand you understand it fully, only that you act rationally within your limits. Principle 49. The ongoing procope, progress, not perfection. Procope, the word means progress, advancement, forward motion. It was the Stoics' antidote to perfectionism. The sage may be the ideal, but the progressor is the reality, the one who's trying, failing, recalibrating, and trying again. Epictetus divided humanity into 3 categories: the fool, the sage, and those in between, the progressors. The sage is nearly non-existent, the fool is common, and the progressor is the one worth being. The Stoics weren't chasing flawlessness, they were chasing trajectory. You aren't measured against some abstract ideal, you're measured against who you were yesterday. The only question that matters: did I progress? Did you show more patience today than before? Did you stop yourself 1 second earlier before snapping? Did you choose restraint where you'd once chosen impulse? If yes, you've already succeeded. Progress, not perfection, is the Stoics' true victory. Failure isn't failure, it's feedback. You'll relapse. You'll lose your temper, procrastinate, indulge, brag. The fool collapses into guilt. The progressor turns the incident into data. What triggered me? What belief was violated? What assumption failed me? The Stoic examines the failure like a scientist, not a sinner. Every misstep becomes curriculum. The standard isn't flawlessness, it's responsiveness. Seneca, perhaps Rome's most eloquent Stoic, admitted his own struggles with anger, impatience, and ego. He wrote, "I am not a wise man, nor even close, but I love wisdom." His humility wasn't performative, it was practical. He knew philosophy isn't a finish line, it's daily maintenance. He'd still feel desire, still envy, still flare up, but each time the episode shortened, the awareness deepened. The fool drowns in passion, the Stoic learns to swim in it. Progress compounds invisibly. The changes are too small to notice in real time. 1 degree of improvement each day is imperceptible until months later you realize your emotional climate has shifted. You catch anger sooner. You forgive faster. You waste less energy on gossip or envy. Like compound interest in finance, compound discipline in virtue quietly transforms character over time. Seneca described this as sculpting the self. Each act of patience, every moment of honesty, every resisted temptation, a chisel strike removing unnecessary stone. Day to day, it looks like dust. Over years, a statue emerges. The Stoic doesn't ask, "Am I perfect?" but "Am I sculpting well?" Progress also demands grace toward self. Beating yourself for imperfection is still ego, the desire to be flawless. The Stoic replaces guilt with analysis, and analysis with adjusted action. You fell? Stand up, learn, resume. Perfectionism freezes growth. Humility fuels it. The beauty of Procope is that it democratizes Stoicism. The sage may be a myth, but progress is available to everyone: soldier, parent, student, prisoner. The question isn't, are you enlightened? It's, are you improving? That's enough. Principle 50. The three disciplines: desire, action, and assent. Epictetus distilled all Stoic practice into three interconnected disciplines. Master these, and you master yourself. The discipline of desire, the discipline of action, and the discipline of assent. The discipline of desire governs what you want and avoid. The Stoic trains desire to align only with what's in your control, your own virtue, your own choices. Everything else, wealth, status, health, reputation, even life and death, are indifference. Prefer them if possible, but never depend on them. This isn't apathy, it's efficiency. You invest emotional energy only where it yields results. Desire what's yours to shape, release what isn't. Epictetus told his students, when you see your child or wife, say to yourself, I am seeing a mortal. Not to extinguish love, but to purify it. Love without clinging, appreciation without possession. Desire things rightly, and you'll never be enslaved by them. The discipline of action deals with what you do. It's the ethics of performance, acting justly, fulfilling your roles, contributing to society. Each person has Kathekonta, appropriate actions tied to their positions. The Stoic mother cares for her child. The Stoic worker fulfills his duty with diligence. The Stoic citizen acts with justice and civic responsibility. Virtue isn't hidden in contemplation, it's expressed in conduct. You can read all the books you want, but if your actions betray your philosophy, you're merely an academic of morality, not its practitioner. The discipline of assent is the highest and hardest. It governs your thoughts, the judgments you accept about what happens. Every emotion begins as an impression. He insulted me. I failed. This is bad. The Stoic inserts a pause. Wait, is this true? Most suffering originates not from events, but from our unexamined assent to distorted impressions. The Stoic becomes the gatekeeper of his mind. He doesn't automatically believe everything that enters consciousness. He filters impressions through reason before granting them approval. Epictetus compared this discipline to customs inspection. Every mental impression arrives at the border of your mind and asks for entry. Your job is to check its papers. Is it true? Is it useful? Does it align with virtue? If not, deny entry. Of the three, Epictetus said, assent is the most difficult. Most can master action, doing what's right when clear. Fewer master desire, wanting rightly. Almost none master assent, perceiving correctly. But this last is the keystone. Without governing assent, desire and action are blind. Mastering assent doesn't remove emotion, it refines it. You still feel anger, sadness, joy, but you no longer believe every story they tell. You experience emotion as weather, not as identity. The Stoic's mind becomes a disciplined observer, shaping reactions instead of being shaped by them. When these three disciplines align, right desire, right action, right assent, you've built unshakable internal order. You're no longer a puppet pulled by externals. You become a coherent being, aligned from thought to choice to behavior, the Stoic ideal in motion. Principle 51. The philosophical life, bios theoreticos. Philosophy, to the Stoics, wasn't theory, it was a way of life. Bios theoreticos meant the examined life, where thinking and living merge. You weren't a philosopher because you debated ethics. You were a philosopher because you embodied them. Reading was for transformation, not accumulation. Epictetus ran his school like a military camp for the soul. Students didn't sit in lecture halls nodding sagely. They practiced. Morning reflection on what the day might bring. Midday attention to conduct. Evening review. What did I do well? What did I fail at? What belief misled me? Stoicism wasn't studied, it was rehearsed. Knowledge without action meant nothing. The Stoics mocked armchair philosophers who quoted Chrysippus but lived in fear and greed. Show me a man who is sick and happy, said Epictetus. Then I will believe he understands philosophy. Marcus Aurelius had no luxury of academia. He practiced philosophy in tents, on battlefields, amid famine and plague. His meditations weren't essays, they were field notes for the soul. Remind yourself, he wrote, you can endure anything your nature allows. Philosophy wasn't a retreat from chaos, it was training to face it. This was Stoic practicality. Every external condition, exile, war, humiliation, loss, became a test of application. The world itself was the classroom. Philosophy's aim wasn't cleverness, it was clarity. The Stoic life was less about knowing and more about remembering. Remembering what matters, what's controllable, what's right. There's also the communal dimension. Though Stoicism emphasizes internal control, the path isn't solitary. Progress accelerates in company. Other practitioners serve as mirrors, revealing blind spots and reinforcing discipline. In Rome, Stoics gathered for discussion, confession, and correction, like athletes training together. Alone, self-deception grows unnoticed. In company, it's challenged into growth. Seneca wrote letters to Lucilius not to preach, but to sharpen mutual progress. As I give, I receive, he said. When I write advice, I remind myself. Philosophical friendship is reciprocal, iron sharpening iron. The Stoic community wasn't built on status or opinion, but on shared pursuit of virtue. You could be slave or senator. What mattered was your practice. Epictetus, born a slave, became one of Rome's most respected teachers. The Stoic Republic transcended class. Its citizenship was moral. Philosophy as daily life meant integration. Eating became gratitude practice. Conversation became speech discipline. Conflict became patience training. Every mundane act became a philosophical exercise. Stoicism, when lived, collapses the distance between ordinary and sacred. There's no separation between philosophy and existence. Every moment becomes a moral opportunity, a chance to exercise justice, courage, temperance, or wisdom. The Stoic philosopher is therefore not cloistered from life, but immersed in it, participating fully, yet internally free. The farmer planting seed, the soldier keeping guard, the parent soothing a child, all living philosophy if done with virtue. The bios theoreticos doesn't mean withdrawal into books. It means translating principles into reflexes. The Stoic studies to live better, not to sound smarter. And when this practice matures, the practitioner becomes tranquil not because life is easy, but because their responses are stable. Their serenity is earned, not imagined. Principle 52. Ataraxia, the untroubled mind. Ataraxia means tranquility. The mind no longer jerked around by the chaos of the world or the storms within. But don't mistake this for emotional numbness. The Stoic doesn't walk through life anesthetized. They feel fully, deeply, precisely, but they remain unbroken beneath it all. Ataraxia isn't escape from emotion. It's mastery of proportion. It's knowing how much each event deserves of your inner peace. And rarely, if ever, is the answer all of it. The modern misunderstanding equates Stoicism with apathy. But apathy is deadness, emotional paralysis, disengagement. Ataraxia is something else entirely. It's the serenity that allows you to engage with life without being consumed by it. The Stoic still feels joy, grief, affection, caution, but none of it metastasizes into anxiety, rage, or despair. The difference is calibration. Your emotions become instruments under control, not wild storms that hijack the helm. Seneca described the ideal mind as calm even in the midst of tumult. Imagine standing in a hurricane while your pulse remains steady, your thoughts clear, your decisions deliberate. That's not delusion, that's discipline. The Stoic trains this through daily awareness, noting how easily the mind is disturbed, how quickly opinion turns pain into suffering. A delay isn't a catastrophe until you label it one. An insult isn't a wound until you internalize it. You don't remove emotion, you remove the distortion. Picture a storm at sea. The surface roars, waves crash violently, the wind screams through the sails. 20 feet below, slower, darker currents. 50 feet down, near stillness. At the ocean floor, silence. That's the Stoic mind. Events rage on the surface, but depth remains unshaken. You still operate at the surface. You act, decide, respond, but you live from the depth. Seneca called ataraxia the philosopher's retirement, the point where nothing external could surprise him, offend him, or command him. Not because he'd stopped caring, but because he'd stopped depending. When fortune brought success, he accepted it lightly. When fortune withdrew it, he released it gracefully. The result wasn't detachment, it was peace. This tranquility has pragmatic benefits. A calm mind sees clearly. Anger clouds judgment. Fear warps risk assessment. Desire compromises integrity. The untroubled mind makes better decisions because it sees the world as it is, not as it wishes or fears it to be. Relationships improve. You stop reacting impulsively. Stop turning every slight into offense, every mistake into betrayal. Your health improves. Cortisol drops. Breathing steadies. Sleep deepens. And paradoxically, outcomes improve too, because calm competence outperforms emotional turbulence in every arena of life. Ataraxia isn't achieved through retreat from the world, but through mastery within it. You don't flee chaos. You become unmoved by it. You still feel the wind, but you don't let it alter your course. That stillness, deep, deliberate, and alive, is the Stoics' most prized possession. Principle 53, the cosmic citizenship, cosmopolites. When Diogenes was asked where he was from, he answered, "I am a citizen of the world." To the Greeks, that was nonsense. Citizenship was city-bound, Athens, Sparta, Thebes. But the Stoics saw truth in his madness. They expanded the idea. We are all cosmopolites, citizens of the cosmos. You belong first to the universe, not to your passport, race, or flag. You were born into the human family before you were born into your nation. Your allegiance is to reason itself, the logos that animates everything and connects every being. In a world that thrived on slavery, tribal warfare, and rigid hierarchies, this idea was revolutionary. To say that emperor and slave share equal dignity through reason, that both contain the divine spark, was philosophical rebellion. But it followed naturally from Stoic logic. If the same fire of reason burns in all, then harming another is like burning your own flesh. The Stoic practices Oikeiosis, expanding circles of concern. It begins naturally. Care for yourself, then family, then friends. But reason compels you outward, to neighbor, to stranger, to enemy. The rational mind recognizes that borders are social constructs, not cosmic ones. The logos permeates all. Marcus Aurelius rehearsed this every morning. Today I shall meet the meddling, the ungrateful, the arrogant. But they share in reason and divinity with me. This was no moral platitude. It was survival strategy. Seeing others as kin neutralized resentment before it began. Anger dissolved into comprehension. Contempt turned into cooperation. Cosmopolitanism isn't naive utopianism. It's realism at scale. You already depend on the world. Your food from foreign soil, your devices from distant factories, your air purified by forests you'll never see. Global interdependence isn't optional, it's fact. The Stoics merely recognized this 2,000 years before modern politics caught up. Today, it's not philosophy, it's necessity. Climate change, pandemics, artificial intelligence, none respect borders. To think tribally in an interconnected world is to invite extinction. Stoic cosmopolitanism offers the mindset our era demands. Loyalty to humanity above faction, to reason above ideology, to cooperation above conquest. To be a citizen of the cosmos is to serve something greater than self, to see every human as collaborator in the same divine experiment. When you act with justice, you strengthen the whole. When you act with cruelty, you weaken it. You are both participant and steward in this vast republic of being. Principle 54, the divine fragment, pneuma, and individual soul. The Stoics taught that within you burns a fragment of the divine, the pneuma, the breath of life, a spark of cosmic fire. You are not separate from divinity. You are its expression, a temporary condensation of universal reason. Imagine waves on an ocean. Each rises, crests, and falls, distinct yet inseparable from the sea. The wave is real, but only as movement within the greater body. So too with you. You are logos expressing itself as this particular life, this mind, this body. When you die, you don't vanish. You return, reabsorbed into the whole from which you came. Marcus spoke often of his daimon, the inner guide, the divine presence within. He didn't mean a supernatural ghost, but his rational soul, the part that participates in the divine order. Modern psychology might call it conscience or higher self. For the Stoic, it was literally divine, your internal connection to cosmic intelligence. To act against reason, then, is to betray divinity within you. To lie, to indulge greed, to harm others. These aren't just moral errors, they're metaphysical treason. You fracture alignment with the logos that sustains everything. But to act with virtue, justice, courage, temperance, wisdom, is to harmonize with the very structure of existence. Death, in this light, loses its terror. You are a fragment returning home. The wave subsides, but the ocean continues. Whether personal consciousness persists or dissolves is irrelevant. Nothing essential is lost. The matter and energy that form you simply reconfigure. The logos reclaims its own. This metaphysical view grounds Stoic ethics. If every human is divine fragment, then cruelty is cosmic self-harm. To enslave, exploit, or kill is to wound the logos itself. Compassion isn't sentiment, it's coherence with reality. Epictetus said, "You carry a god within you, poor wretch, and you know it not." His insult was medicine, to jolt students awake to the dignity they forget. You don't need to pray upward, you need to remember inward. Once you understand that the same divine fire animates all, arrogance becomes absurd, despair becomes impossible, and reverence becomes natural. You're not alien in the cosmos. You are the cosmos, conscious of itself for a fleeting moment. Treat that moment with sacred seriousness. Principle 55. The eternal return to virtue, telos and eudaimonia. Every principle points here. The Stoic telos, the ultimate purpose, is eudaimonia, flourishing, thriving, the good life. But not the modern counterfeit of pleasure or comfort. For the Stoic, eudaimonia is living with perfect virtue, and virtue alone is sufficient for happiness. Seneca, Epictetus, Marcus, they all staked everything on that claim. If you possess virtue, nothing external can diminish your flourishing. You may be poor, sick, imprisoned, despised, but if your mind remains rational and your character upright, you are complete. The world can strip your possessions, not your peace. This is the Stoic's most radical inversion. Success measured not by circumstance, but by conduct. The world calls the rich man fortunate. The Stoic calls him fortunate only if he's good. The world pities the beggar. The Stoic honors him if he's just. They even constructed the extreme thought experiment, the sage under torture. Imagine the perfect Stoic bound, whipped, burned. Even there, they said, he would remain serene. Not because he enjoys pain, but because virtue, the alignment of his will with reason, remains unbroken. His flourishing is untouchable because it depends on nothing external. For ordinary people, that sounds inhuman. But the Stoic isn't describing fantasy. He's describing direction. Every day, you return to virtue. Again, again, again. You fail, you realign. The telos is not arrival, but constant orientation. The journey itself is eudaimonia. Marcus, near death, wrote with calm clarity, "If the gods still wish me to live, I shall live as I have lived. If not, I shall depart as I have done, grateful." No terror, no clinging, no regret. He hadn't reached perfection, but he'd lived in pursuit of it, and that pursuit was peace. Eudaimonia isn't an emotion. It's an equilibrium. You may feel sadness, frustration, fatigue, but beneath all, there's a hum of coherence. You're living rightly. You're aligned. And that, the Stoics said, is joy deeper than pleasure, serenity stronger than security. The ultimate freedom lies here. Your mind is the final frontier. Master it, and fortune's power evaporates. Lose it, and no wealth or fame can compensate. You've walked through the full architecture of Stoicism, from discipline of assent to love of fate, from logos to ataraxia. Each principle circles the same truth. Virtue is freedom, wisdom is peace, and everything else is noise. You will falter. You will forget. You will be pulled again by the world's illusions. But the Stoic path has no endpoint, only return. Each morning, each choice, each breath, the invitation is renewed. Align with reason, act with virtue, love your fate. That eternal return, the daily reorientation toward excellence, is the good life. The practice never ends, which means the opportunity for peace never ends. And that, the Stoics would say, is enough. And that's where we'll rest tonight. 55 principles, all pointing to the same truth. Your mind is the only empire you'll ever truly govern. If this brought you clarity or peace, subscribe. There's more wisdom waiting. Good night.